All right, peace, people. All right. Oh, it's already. All right. All right, so we're going to start shortly. We're just going to wait for a few people. A couple minutes late. We'll get going shortly. All right. All right. I'm going to start shortly. We're just waiting for some more people to come in, so I got to repeat myself. Testing. All right. Just making sure everything. All right, there we go. Cool. All right. Testing the chat. I see people typing in. Cool. It's working. Had a little issue with that last time. Last time it actually disappeared. It was crazy. I don't know what happened or why, but anyway. Appears to be working. Cool. Okay. Be Like Water. Got that book. That's good. Probably going to be hitting that soon. So I'd get into that heavy. Like I say, we're going to start in a minute or two as I see people coming in. Got here a few minutes late. I actually was here on time. Got caught up doing something. So we will. Peace, brother. Step away. Good to see you, brother. All right, we're going to start some. I had to switch feeds, so we're going to wait for this. I don't want to have to repeat myself, so I'm going to give it like 2 more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and start. All right, so we got everything working. Just wanted to test everything here. Everything working. Let's just move this back. So I have some space here. All right. All right. Just make sure this is cool. All right. All right. Appears like we are good. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll start with a couple of quick announcements before we get into it. Hold on a second. I'm sorry. Trying to get situated here. Just checking everything. Make sure everything's good. All right, cool. All right, so a couple quick announcements before we begin. First foremost, I think it was today's Tuesday, Sunday. This past Sunday, sometime it was either late afternoon, early evening. I did send the curriculum and the dates out for the upcoming online spring class session. Just to reiterate, everybody that is on the list that I have should have received it. If you did not receive it, send me an email if you are interested in signing up. It will begin, I believe it's March 23rd and running to the 27th of April. All the information that you need for the class is in there. That went out Sunday, because I know people have been emailing me over the last couple of weeks about it, and I hadn't or wasn't able to get around to it. But I finally got it finished, and I sent it out this past Sunday. So if you did not get that email about the upcoming spring session, just send me an email and I'll get it to you. To my knowledge, I did send it to everybody that did send me an individual email, and to those that I have on the list that requested it. So if you did not receive it, just send me an email and I'll get that information out to you. I also sent out earlier today, we have 2 events coming up at the end of February. We're still in January. Obviously, January is about to depart from us. We only have 2 more days, and this month is already gone. Actually, today, it's been a year to the date today. I was a little busy doing some stuff. Year to the date today that my father passed. And that's how quick this past year has gone today. Actually, crazy thing is coming online about 5 minutes to be exact. Another story. His birthday was actually the 23rd, a few days ago. So two things are real close. But earlier today, I sent out the flyer for both of the events at the end of the month. We will be having a ritual on the 22nd, more of a working. And in the few upcoming videos that'll be following this video, we're going to get into some specifics of Sith philosophy and Sith sorcery, because we are doing the ritual of the Dark Lords. It's a Sith ritual. It's very detailed. We're going to see who's dark side in this ritual, for lack of a better word. It is, in a sense, an initiatic ritual. Not that you're being initiated to any group type of thing. It is a personal spiritual initiation. You will be being initiated into the aspect and the spiritual system of what it represents. There are some trials and tribulations in the ritual. I'm just going to tell you what I can. It is a participation ritual. It is fairly intense, but I can tell you it is a very powerful ritual. It's about strengthening and enforcing the will. I'm going to be going over that in some of the next upcoming videos, which will proceed after this, which will happen after this one. Next couple of weeks, I will be dealing in depth with different aspects of Sith philosophy, Sith sorcery, Sith black magic, any of those spiritual systems, to get people prepared. When I say prepared, to just get them familiar, you got to prepare yourself. Nobody can do it for you. To get people kind of in tune and familiar leading up to the ritual on the 22nd, because it is a very intense ritual. It's a little, we've never done one of this nature here. This will be the first time. It's something I've been putting together for the last several months, and I figured now is the right time to unleash it. It does deal with the darker or the dark side aspects of your subconscious mind, really testing that willpower, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So that flyer went out today. Important you request an invite. There are some requirements for the ritual and some things you need to know if you are going to participate, and some things how you need to come prepared for that particular work. I'm looking very forward to it. I'm kind of excited about it because that's one of the areas or paths that little, like the Sith say, is my passion, because that's an aspect that can really, bring out a certain, aspect within you. All right. So that'll be on February 22nd, which is 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then on Saturday, the 23rd, we haven't had one in several months. We will be having a drumming on the beach, 7:30 p.m. That is open to anybody. Anybody can attend that. You don't have to, call or request an invite for that. The information, all you need to know is on that flyer. The address, the time we start. You can bring anybody to that. It's an open event. We just do, if you do attend that, if you, there's no obviously chairs, you need to bring your own beach chairs if you need periods where you need to sit. We do pretty much go in, intently and hard when we drum. So if you do need a chair, it is required to bring your own beach chair if you do need to sit down. And I believe that's on the flyer. I'm almost certain it is. And obviously water. We do it in the evening time, so we don't do it in the hot point of the day. We do it right around when sunset kicks in, going into the early evening, which is usually a very nice time out on the beach as far as the weather and the environment. So, and again, anybody can attend that event. You don't have to email me if you want to let us know you're coming. That's cool. Not mandatory. If you are a drummer, you play drums or any type of related instruments, feel free to bring those instruments to that drum circle that we'll be having on the 23rd of February. And just come out and vibe. It's a good time. It's a fun time. Usually right after that, I'll do a class right there, a little question and answer session right afterwards. So we kind of have a little build session afterwards. So for those that are able to attend that, those will be back to back. That'll be Friday and Saturday at the end of the month. So if you are in the area, if you're not from here and you are able and you're in the area, feel free to come or hit us up. All right. Also, another announcement. That's why I got caught up sending out all this shit today. Also have confirmed for this, and I'll go over these announcements later when we have everybody here. On this Thursday night on Primordial Chaos Radio, we will have Father Sebastian on the show live, and we will be discussing this book here, a book that you've heard me talk about many times before over the last couple of years on different shows. We will be discussing Vampire Magic. I know a lot of you have this book already. I would look over it, go over it. I would like people to, whether you're watching it here live on YouTube or you're going to be on the radio site, Talk Shoe, I would like you to call in, ask Father Sebastian some questions. I know a lot of you like to watch it on YouTube and just type through the chat, but this is your chance to interact. And the objective of having the live interaction, I want you guys to be able to react and participate rather than just stay in the background and not let your voice be heard. So you should let your voice be heard. In my discussions with Father Sebastian, this won't be the only time we'll bring him on. Obviously, as you know, he has multiple books that he's written. But I want to kind of, when we bring guests out on that have a lot of literature out there, I kind of want to focus on particular works so we can get the information concrete. As you know, Vampire Magic is a very good, if you want to call it a grimoire. It's an excellent work because I think it touches the core essence of what vampirism is. It's a good work to understand it. So if you have the book, and I know a lot of you have the book, start looking at it because Thursday is only a couple of days away. Get your questions formulated. If you do work out of the book, which I know I have, and I've obviously adjusted it and changed it to my method, this is your chance to ask Father Sebastian some questions on that, ideas, suggestions. As you know, as you've read his book, just like many other authors, cult left-hand path authors, they always leave the door open for your personal suggestion, influence. So if you've done work out of the book and you got questions, this would be a perfect time on Thursday night to actually speak and communicate with him directly and ask those questions. And again, I want to make this clear, as I said, the reason why I am now, and again, things change. So it might slow down later. I haven't had any guests on the shows in a while, so I figured I'd bring some back on to kind of, again, not because I agree with everything of a particular guest that I bring on the show. Again, I'm doing it so you guys can get a different perspective. Because a lot of the books we refer to, we all read a lot of these books, we all study a lot of these books. So let's now pick the minds of the authors that have written these books to get a good understanding. Let's let it help us understand what mind frame they were coming from. And that can assist and help you in you creating your own personal work. Because as I've said, how I've always approached studying books is using it as a blueprint or a map, not as a tell-all, not as the sole truth on everything on that subject. That's not how anybody with a Luciferian mindset would look at any type of book. They would look at it and see how can they adjust it to their personal path of self-mastery. And as I've said, I myself have done several different things out of Father Sebastian's work. So again, we'll have him on the show live Thursday night, 8:00. Wouldn't want to miss that. We'll have Bao Cadman. He'll be on the 14th, Valentine's Day. Go figure. We'll be talking to him about the power of mantras and chants, Lilith magic. I had discussed with him, and creating demons. It was another book. We're gonna bounce around on 3 different topics. As you know, Brother Bao Cadman is not a very vocal figure. Actually, on the old Awakening Universal Mind show, that was the first live appearance or broadcast he ever did. And to my knowledge, outside of his own podcast, I don't think still has done anything since then. But he's very busy. As you know, he writes a lot of books. He's been gracious enough to reach out and come back on. I got some more people lined up. I'll drop that as it unfolds. We're going to have some good guests, some good occult left-hand path authors. And that's what I'm focusing on, is because we read a lot of these books. Again, I want to stress, we read a lot of these books. So let's pick the minds of the authors that wrote these books so we can get a better understanding of what frame of mind they were in, et cetera. All right. So that's the stuff we got upcoming. Again, don't miss it Thursday. I definitely would be here. I'll be here for that, because if vampire magic is one of your paths, one of the systems you use, and as you know, Father Sebastian has a large vampiric coven / community worldwide. Even though he's based out of New York, he has members outside of the United States, within the United States. As you know, he's also connected with Michael W. Ford, who did the intro to his book. They've kind of collaborated on some stuff. But like I said, we'll be able to pick his brain. So looking forward to it. And I hope anybody that practices vampirism in some shape, form, or fashion, this would be your opportunity to stop by. All right. So what I want to do, the second and final part to finish up with, we were discussing last week. We were discussing Obeah, right? We were talking about the path of Papa Bones, right? Just a quick review. And if you didn't see last week's show, I would recommend you go watch it, because the thing is, for the sake of time and going over material, we want to make sure that we're not rehashing and going over the same stuff simultaneously, okay? Which is very important. So for time's sake, just a quick review without having to rehash everything. Briefly, we talked about last week the concept of it, okay? How you will find in different spiritual systems some similarities. And one of the unique things about Obeah, as I talked about last week, it really can't be likened to a specific system. That's the thing that we have to be clear of. Even though you will see some similar connections and aspects in other, West African spiritual systems, don't let that confuse you, because as we discussed last week, and the book that we were using was Obeah, A Sorceress's Story. This book here, I can never pronounce the author's name. Nicholas de Matos Frisvold. I'll just put it up there. It's too long. I ain't gonna be spelling all that shit out. Who was initiated in Trinidad in Obeah. And I personally, this is just my opinion, the same thing like with Paulo. A lot of these spiritual systems that are passed down from mouth to ear, I don't really like to, get feedback from a non-initiate on this type of subject. That's just my opinion, because there's a lot of fluffy bullshit out there. I'm going to be honest with you. And I've talked about it before with Paulo. Going through Paulo, a lot of the shit in the books is basic. I want to make that clear. There's no book you're going to read on Paulo that's going to break it down in its essence and correlate that experience as if you experienced it yourself. Don't let nobody fool you. There's good books out there, don't get me wrong, that touch on it the best they can. But remember, a lot of these spiritual systems were passed from mouth to ear. They were given to the initiate by elders, and that's what kept those quote unquote practices and secrets sacred, for lack, if we want to use that term for lack of a better word. That's why I said be careful of all these charlatans on the internet telling you they can make you naga pots and do all this bullshit for you. They can't, because nobody can mail you a charged up naga pot through the mail. And if you understand any of these spiritual systems, including Obeah, you wouldn't fall for that shit. So let's make sure we're clear on that. I chose this book specifically. If you've done your research on Obeah, there's not a lot of books and literature out there. You could pull some up, but be careful. Some of the main ones that are always promoted mainstream are written by non-initiates. This particular individual from Trinidad was initiated and went through. So he's speaking from an experience perspective. And to me, that's always the best. Experience is the best teacher. I like to present it in that format, even though many people over the years have asked me about Ifa, Santeria, Paulo, getting initiated. And as I said, if I knew what I knew now, I probably wouldn't have done it. But if that's a choice you make down the road, that's entirely up to you. That's a decision you need to make for yourself. But as I've mentioned to many people in the past, remember, there's a commitment that comes with that. See, the difference on this path, when you're on the path to self-mastery, you dictate how that's going to go. You dictate what you're going to do and not do, what's for you and not. But you got to understand, when you commit to a traditional spiritual initiatic system, you got to follow the rules. That's just the way it is. I've had some people, don't realize there's a lot of animal and blood sacrifice involved. And some people, I had one person who was a vegetarian. Some dude emailed me and he didn't know that. How could you not know that? That means to me you're not doing your research. If animal and blood sacrifice isn't your thing, then these aren't the paths for you. I'm gonna be honest with you. You're wasting your time. So I say that to use that as an example. You don't have the leadway to pick and choose. When you find a elder that takes you under their wing, he or she, they're following a system that's been passed down for generations. There's no getting around it. So I always tell people, if you make the decision to go through one of these initiatic spiritual traditional systems, make sure you're willing to make the commitment. If you're doing it for the experience, I want to make that clear, because it's clear as day. If you think you're going to pick and choose what you want to do, it's not going to work out. You won't last, and you'll get dropped. They won't keep you up under their wing. So I want to make that clear. I just pass it along and tell it like it is. I don't tell people what to do and not to do. It's not my job to tell you should you or should you not get initiated. That's personal. If you feel that it's a path you need to go and it's something you need to experience, power to you. Knock yourself out. But if you're iffy about it, you're not sure, and you think you may not, or you're not sure if you're able to uphold the commitment, then I would say don't do it. All right. Because there is a serious commitment and responsibility, along with a serious financial responsibility. This shit ain't cheap. And anybody that's gone through it knows, depending on what system you're doing, it could be thousands upon thousands of dollars to get fully initiated in these systems. So I just want to be clear on that. This ain't here, read a book, and it's over. But anyway, what I want to talk about tonight, really, we talked about a little bit where we left off last week. This is very similar. You see the term of the title in the video, Afro-Shamanic witchcraft, right? We talked about the path of Papa Bones, right? We broke down the aspect of that and the connection of Sasa Bonsam's world, right? Which we're going to get into tonight, which would be everything that permeates the energy. We liken it in other paths as the black flame, right? We liken it to Set in other paths, that energy that the black flame represents, right? Papa Bones would be the physical manifestation of that, right? Or another aspect or another synchronized aspect of the Prince of Darkness, all right? So we're going to go a little bit more in depth. So Afro, you'll see there's a lot of witchcraft, quote unquote, that's kind of integrated in this, all right? So what I want to start off, we left off here last week, and I'm going to get into a little bit of this. Actually, two aspects I want to get into. All right. I want to repeat one statement that we left off last week. All right. And let me start here. The Prince of Darkness, the Prince of Evil, the Prince of Hell. The fact that the Obeah men gravitate towards grammars of the black arts and their practice, which is often known as working the Kabbalah, right? Not the traditional Kabbalah, we'll get into that, has certainly contributed to this association. Obeah men tend to be amused by this association because, in a way, it is true, but they also hold that Papa Bones is more like Moses than the biblical Satan. Satan, in the cosmological vision of the Obeah man, represents the power of exorcism and the knowledge of death, right? This is where we kind of left off last week. The knowledge of death represents the total knowledge of existence, and therefore this knowledge is what constitutes the Obeah and gives the power of transformation to the Obeah man. So when you're working with the death current, when you're working with black magic, right? Outside of the external things that people might get spooked out about or stereotyped about, let's make this clear, okay? To really be connected with working with that death energy, right? You have to be clear and understand it represents the total knowledge of the existence of what death represents and constitutes, all right? And as I've said many times before, when you're working with the death current via necromancy, with the ancestor spirits of the dead, it represents change, regeneration, renewal. If there's not constant growth, change, and renewal, then you're not working with the death current. You're just doing a lot of shit, convincing yourself that you're working with the death current, because this type of power brings about tremendous change. It can be very intense in certain points and periods when it comes. It can be very overwhelming because when you tap into this power and energy, I want to make this clear, it brings about change you need. Not just sometimes we confuse what we want for what we need, and it's two different things. So you must be clear when activating some of these forces and working with some of this energy. All right. All right. So what I want to go, and we talked about also Sase Bonsam as Lord of the Forest, because remember, also in Obeah, they work with a lot of spirits and natures, a lot of spirits in the woods and the forest. They have a thing called shadow nailing, right? Where they can trap and utilize spirits to do their bidding, very similar. There was also, we talked about last week, shape-shifting, taking on the form of animals. There's a vampiric aspect to this path too. Don't shit yourself, all right? This is important to understand, and what makes this path, in my opinion, as I said last week, very unique. It incorporates a lot of aspects, a lot of these paths that we're familiar with, right? It incorporates a lot of them. You'll see many different systems incorporated in this, all right? All right, so All right. Let me. All right. All right, so I'm going to go to chapter 5, and I'm going to get a little bit more into depth and kind of tie this all together with Sasse Bonsam, Papa Bones, what that represents. Now, remember the key points from last week, which is very important. Remember the objective of the Obeah man, because remember, Obeah means the power. When you say you're an Obeah man or woman, you have that power, that source, that energy, right? What is that energy? The black flame, right? You're tapped into what the power of the Prince of Darkness represents. All those things that we talked about last week. That's why they call it a black magical path. That's why they call it an Afro-shamanic path, because there's a lot of incorporation of working with herbs, elixirs, certain plants, creating certain elixirs that take you to heightened states of ecstasy. All of this is part of this path. So that's where the shamanic witchcraft aspect comes in. And you will see this if you're familiar with Nadoki. You will see some of this in voodoo or voodoo. But again, and I gotta keep reiterating, because you might see some similarities on the surface, don't let that confuse you. Because remember, as we talked about last week, this is a path that has to be understood and mapped out by the person going through it. That's how you truly understand and embrace this path. There is no manual. There is no set formula. There is no quote unquote set rites like many other initiatic systems. It's not really set in stone. And again, this is to me what makes it unique and different than a lot of other paths. All right. So we're going to go into chapter 5, and we are going to talk about the call to Papa Bones. If this is a path that you're interested in utilizing, there are sigils. Somebody had asked last week where we left off. Somebody had asked, do they work with sigils on this path? And if you remember, I had started to answer, and I said we would get into it this week. I made it clear, yes, they do. But do all practitioners utilize sigils? Absolutely not. It is utilized on a wide scale level. My first introduction to this, and some of us might know people in New York. I knew a lot of people that were Shango Baptiste. A lot of people that are Shango Baptiste are affiliated, usually, not all, but I'm going to say majority, are usually affiliated with Obeah in some shape, form, or fashion. We also talked about an aspect of Kali that's used via Trinidad, that is used in Obeah, accessing one of the working paths of Kali Ma, which they work with an aspect of Kali and Obeah that deals with clearing paths, a destructive aspect of Kali that's very similar to Kali Durga, which is a very road clearing, destructive change, for lack of a better word, change clearing path. And as you know, in Trinidad, if you are familiar and study Kali, you know there's a large cult following of Kali there. And there is an aspect of Kali that is incorporated into Obeah, which some people may or may not know. But again, as I've mentioned before, when you're working with Kali, before you start getting into all the Brahma Marga and the Tantra, and that shit's all good, and that's a part of it, don't get me wrong, you should get the mind and everything internal right first, because that can be counterproductive. And I've seen it. You may think on the surface that you get caught up in some of the external things. For an example, in this scenario with Kali, you should do the road clearing, path clearing work, the personal, spiritual, mental, emotional path clearing work first, in my opinion. And I'm sure many other people would tell you the same before you indulge with raising the Kundalini or the serpent energy. Because you've heard in the past, that's not all pleasant sometimes. That's not all, people think that, that term is always a pleasant thing. It can be a very painful thing. It can be a very painful thing on a mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical level. And usually when there's a lot of pain repercussions from it, there was something that wasn't touched on before you go into some of those other aspects. Now, they work with an aspect of that on this path. And to me, that is the most important work that one can do, is self-corrected work on themselves, because all the other shit is pointless. You can set out, to do work, rituals. You could set out to set up all these elaborate things, but if you're not right in here and you ain't right in here, you're not going to get no results. Trust me when I tell you. There'll just be a lot of nice external psychodramas, for lack of a better word, because that's really what you're doing. But psychodramas can be effective or non-effective. In this case, it would be very non-effective. And any good path that gets to the core essence of things usually has some work that's rooted in, we'll use the term clearing up your bullshit, getting yourself right, whatever terminology you want to use, that's fine. But it's important to do that. That's one of the paths of, for an example, dealing with the power of Obeah. Obeah is important to understand, because how can you have your power or really be operating on your true power and potential if none of that stuff is addressed? Okay. So as I said before, obviously, just like with anything else out here, I don't care if it's, comedic studies. I don't care if it's Ifa. I don't care if it's Santeria, whatever it might be. Just like anything else, you got a lot of bullshit out here. I'm gonna keep it real with you. And I'm not by all means saying that everything that I'm saying is the tell all. No, you should always be studying, researching, and absorbing everything. But there is a lot of bullshit out there. And some of it kind of becomes churchy. I'm gonna be honest with you. It becomes gimmicky, and it becomes very churchy because it becomes about money. As I said earlier, if you're tuning late, don't let nobody tell you they can make you a naga pot or some type of ritualistic tool and mail it to you in the mail and charge you a ridiculous amount of money, because you know that old saying, there's a sucker born every minute. And don't be one of them suckers, because you don't know how many emails I've gotten over the years of people that have gotten ripped off from bullshit work. I did a video a couple months back about a naga pot. I know somebody that got seriously ripped off on a naga pot. And I went through, can't remember whose book it was. I referred people to just the ingredients that it takes to put a naga pot together. If you saw it when we went over it, you can go back and watch the video. If you would have known that information, you probably wouldn't have, and I told this individual, you probably wouldn't have fell for that hustle. I know sometimes the individual is eager and their intent is good. But like I say, man, suckers are born every day. You got charlatans and people ready to strike and attack. They're not interested in that. They see dollar signs. All they see is somebody that's so desperate that they can hustle them and make some money off of them. And that's a reality. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to even BS you. So try not, when you're starting out on these paths or you're new, try not to look so desperate and open yourself up where you can be taken advantage of. Be patient. And any great master, sage, scholar throughout history will always tell you that patience is the hardest school to master. Don't let, your naiveness coupled with your eagerness get you played. And I see it happen all the time. Again, in these paths here, if you're not willing to really, do the work yourself, or if you're going the initiatic route, traditionally find a good priest or priestess to take you through, which can be a challenge in itself. It's very important. But I've found out over the years, you can do this yourself. I found out over the years what you're paying a lot of people to do and paying them thousands upon thousands of dollars. Don't let them shit you. They'll tell you, you don't have the ashe if you're not initiated, you can't do it. It's all bullshit. If you start believing that shit, yes, it becomes a reality, right? And that's why last week on Primordial Chaos Radio, we had Brother Bokor Rodney on. And he made it clear, and he's an initiated Bokor. And here's initiated Bokor telling you it is not mandatory. Now, sometimes when there's greater work to do in that path, when it requires blood and animal sacrifice, if you're working deeply and intent in that path, you would have to go to somebody that is cut and initiated in the knife, as we call it. When it comes to that, in my opinion, if you're going to deal with animal and blood sacrifice and you have not gone through the ritual of the knife and you have not been taking through that ritual where you now have the correct practices of the correct way. And I'm saying this for animal, non-animal cruelty's sake. You're taught through those rituals the correct way if you're going to slaughter animals. There's a correct way to do it, okay? I don't recommend you do that if you have no experience with it. Now, if you have experience with it, yes. But as Bokor said last week, he made it clear. You know, sometimes when it's dealing with that level of intensity, when it requires blood and animal sacrifice, that might be the time you want to enlist help. But I found out if you've done consistent work, especially in the voodoo hoodoo pantheon, outside of the regular offerings, you should never have to do that unless you got some crazy shit going on. Usually when animal sacrifice is involved, there's some crazy shit going on. But just something to marinate on, all right? All right, so let's talk about Anansi's Trail and Sase Bonsam's world. Connect us to Papa Bone. Then we'll talk about some sigils if you want to, if this is a pattern. Now, as I said, I did some of this work last week. When I invoke Papa Bones, I tend to get very nauseous. I get a massive migraine. It's a very intense power. I feel like I'm going to puke sometimes. This ain't no shit to play with. And I'm telling you this from experience. I know there's others that have had similar experiences. Some of you shared it last week. I've gotten emails since last week's show about that. It's a very normal effect, so I wouldn't let it, alarm you or scare you. But it can be very intense. It reminds me almost in Palo Mayembe, dealing with Sarabando, who is the individual that I was consecrated in Palo. It's like you get like a fiery, hot feeling, same thing. It's a very similar energy. And we also have to be clear in understanding the difference, and I think people get confused with that, with spirits and archetypes, deities. There's a difference. Sometimes when you hear people talk about it, they make it sound like it's all the same thing. It's not. There's a difference between a spirit and working with an archetype or deity or a deific mass. It's not the same thing. It's not quite the same thing as working with a bloodline ancestral spirit. Let's get that clear. I've seen in some circles where it's presented wrong. These systems have a place and they should be carried out a certain way. Trust me when I tell you. If you're not viewing it like that, I guarantee you're probably not getting consistent results. It's not the same thing. And anybody that's telling you it is, I'm going to have to just keep it 100 with you. They're not, or they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So it's important to educate yourself on the approach, right? Because as I said, when we deal with the personal daemon or the higher self, these are all fragments of what we call our higher self, right? That we can utilize and tap in, because working with that higher self or that personal daemon, or whatever you want to call it, okay, deals with these are just various paths or systems, all right? So let's go through this, and then I will go, as I usually do when I'm done, I'll go through the chat. I'm just going to go through some sections like I did last week. You guys can type your questions in, and then I will go through that. Again, if I didn't greet you when you came in, peace and greetings. All right, for the Wisi, Papa Bones and all the spirits, the Obeah man works with are known as Chromanti. So what's this pantheon of spirits that we've been talking about last week leading up today? When we incorporate all this, Anima Sola, when we talk about Sase Bonsam, when we talk about Papa Bones, and that's all these things, this is what they term it as, Chromanti, right? Chromanti means flying ones. They are connected with air, and the Obeah spirits with hot air. Chromanti can mingle with spirits of other elements, like Papa Bones is hot air mingling with earth. And also understand this, there's a lot of Luciferian aspect to this, because there's a micro and a macrocosm aspect to this path. There's a high connection with you as the living, breathing, intelligent physical being and your connection with nature. Obeah incorporates the connection with the spirit world, nature, and the human physical being in flesh and bones, right? When it talked about when somebody is initiated and Papa Bones is placed upon them, we went through the skeletal, all the different aspects or bones in your body. It's something that resonates in your DNA. What it's actually doing is activating that Obeah power that is actually already there. Remember, there's nothing this is what we got to get locked in our mind. I know it's fucked up for some people because religion has done such a job on our subconscious mind. And a lot of us think we're past it. A lot of people think, oh, I've been on this path for years. It doesn't. Yes, there's a lot of trauma unconsciously there that you're not aware of. There is nothing being brought externally in internally. It's the reverse. It's activating what's already there, but you've forgotten or do not remember how to activate that power of the Prince of Darkness or Papa Bones. Remember, as I talked about in the Luciferian, remember the fall recorded in the Bible was your awakening. That's when you actually woke up. See, the fools that switch that stuff around, the men that put that shit together, have reversed the story to confuse you. That fall of Lucifer being cast out of the heavens represents you actually waking the fuck up, right? It's reversed. They teach it to you to reverse it. That was a bad thing. That represents the nonconformist refusing to conform. And now you are on your own. Then you went from that into a state of isolated consciousness. You started to become a free thinker. You started to question things. That's what Lucifer represents as the light bearer or the bearer or the intellect bearer, right? The light represents what? The intellect or the knowledge, not the artificial luminous light. That's artificial light. Because remember, that light blinds, right? And you have to go back to your Masonic studies. If you're a Mason, you don't even have to be. That's the first thing on, well, not just the EA degree, but when you're brought from the darkness into the light, that's when you became ignorant. Once they say, let there be light, you're blinded by that light. What does that artificial light represent? Not just the actual physical light that blinds you, but all the misinformation, the indoctrination. That represents the blinding light. Because when you started to rely on these things to guide you, that's when you became confused. But when you were in the darkness, right, especially in any of those degrees, whether it's the Masonic Lodge or similar degree work, right, that's when you were operating at your prime peak. You weren't relying on these eyes to see, you were relying on this eye to see. Your higher senses kicked in. Your awareness was raised to a certain level. You were sharp because in that darkness where everything emerges or that chaos, you were able to tap into and connect, and you were operating at your strongest. But what happened when the blindfold was taken off? It took you a minute for your eyes to adjust to the blinding light, right? There's more of a science to that. Trust me, right? There's more of a science to that. This is what this is talking about, okay? It's giving you another aspect of it, but now it's taking you from ignorance into intellect, right? Because ignorance has root in the word to ignore something, correct? So when you are ignorant, you are ignoring what? Ignoring the truth or ignoring your personal truth or personal facts, things that could be holding you back. So we say you become ignorant or in a state of ignorance, right? All of this shit was done intentionally, twisted around to keep people confused. But I keep telling people, those Bible stories, if you understand them, they are very occultic in nature. There's a lot of hidden shit encoded in them. Don't be deceived what the Bible thumpers are pushing on the surface. If you're on this path, you understand some of the secret and hidden meanings in there. It tells the story of how our personal and spiritual nature evolved. It's just you gotta know how to understand to see it. Don't go by the religious shit. They're taking the shit, twisting it, because remember, I just watched, what movie was it? The last Robin Hood movie that came out, right? If you haven't seen it, go see it. The one with Jamie Foxx. Don't believe the bullshit. I know they didn't get the greatest write-ups. It's a bunch of bullshit. It's a good movie for somebody that's on this path and occultist. A lot of good shit in there. I personally like the movie. I like the way it was filmed. It connects the Moorish aspect. There's a lot of history with that. But outside of that, there's a lot of encoded esoterical shit in there. So they show you in there, just like during those times, medieval times, during the times of the Crusades, when they were warring with the Moors, Saladin, and everybody was fighting over controlling Jerusalem and Solomon's temple, which it incorporates that. And me personally, I like movies during that era. It entertains me, but they show you how corrupt the Catholic Church is and the cardinals, and really how they were the ones responsible for controlling the wars and controlling the money and starting the wars, etc., and funding the wars, which is shit we already know. But there's a statement in there that stood out to me. There's a scene where one of the cardinals is talking
to the king of, the sheriff of Longley, as they call him in there, the guy that's supposed to be the bad guy. And he says, and I've said this statement very similar. He says, fear is one of, this quote unquote, he says, fear is the greatest asset and tool to the Catholic Church. He says, we used fear. He said, why do you think we created hell? He says this to Cardinal, why do you think we created hell? He said, because fear is one of the greatest assets in the weaponry bag of the Catholic Church. It's why we created the fictitious concept of hell and purgatory. And as I said before, now they're telling you this shit in the movie, and they're showing you, as I've said before, fear is one of the most number one things people suffer from and fail at everything they do because of fear. And again, there's different levels of fear. There's emotional fear. There's spiritual fear. There's physical fear of the fucking boogeyman, right? We talked about that a little bit last week. You must get over your personal fears. I bring that up to say shamanism, right? As we say, there's the shamanistic aspect of this path. One thing a shaman does, if you study any aspect of shamanism, one thing, in order to become a shamanic master, you must conquer your fears. This is where you'll see sometimes the play of psychedelics, herbs, elixirs, hallucinogens come into play. If that's a path you so choose, is to bring one to a state. Now pay attention to this. This is where road clearing work comes from. So I'm kind of giving you the formula here. This is where road clearing work come from. It brings your fears to the surface so you can address them. You can't be a master if you don't address your fears head on. You can't be a god or a goddess if you're masking and covering up bullshit. What do I mean by that? You could be putting on some cultural attire, a big ass fucking ankh, walking around saying Hotep and fooling everybody. You got everybody, oh, Hotep brother, Hotep sister, Alafia, and all that good shit. But you're not right in here. You got some fucked up dirt you're doing. We all do. You're playing yourself and faking the funk. What do I mean? If you ain't got your lusts and your greed and your desires, I'm not saying to ignore them. That's not what this path is about. But if you ain't got them working in harmony, it's good. Lust can be good. Lust can be bad. Lust is a pleasureful thing when it's satisfying your sexual desires. That's a good thing when done within reasoning. Lust can be a bad thing if it forces you into making dangerous decisions that can harm your health or that can harm you in other ways and destroy certain aspects of your life, right? Money, maybe you suck ass with money. You can't keep $1 in your pocket, right? As quick as it comes, as quick as it goes, vice versa, right? You could be, again, as I've said many times before, a shitty parent, a shitty family member, a shitty sibling. Maybe your temper is off the charts. And again, rage and anger can be good if channeled correctly, but maybe you don't have any type of control over it, all right? So we can't walk around playing spiritual guru and we ain't even got our shit together. And we can't be giving advice to other motherfuckers and we ain't got our shit together. I don't care. Look, a title don't mean nothing to me. I don't care because somebody went to some, through some system or some education and got some fucking degree or title. That's nice. But I still got to judge a person by the criteria that they're talking about. Meaning you should be a living embodiment of the information you teach. So if you're telling people to deal with your bullshit, but you're not dealing with your own bullshit, I can't take you serious. You understand? And we're all constantly dealing with some aspect of our personal bullshit. It's nonstop. The work never ends. So if you think you're going to wake up one day, oh, I got it all figured out. I'm so fucking perfect. Everything is great. I'm so smart, wise, and intelligent. People love me. You're dumber. You're dumber than you're dumber than this mouse right here. As much like my whole point is, you should be a living example of that. All right, and that's the difference between this. But that's what these systems do. It intentionally brings to the surface your fears, your weaknesses. Because the only way you can become a master is you must overcome them and master them. But in the flip note, it also takes those weaknesses and fears and it gives you the ability to flip them so they now work for you. They don't control you, but now you can utilize that same energy that you fed with fear. You can utilize that energy for something productive. All right, let's continue. All right, so we left off with chromanty, can mingle with spirits and other elements. Like Papa Bones is hot air mingling with earth. One Wissy man I met who saw Obeah as a form of Bokor craft, and that like voodoo, told me that he saw Papa Bones as a horned skeletal figure resting within a tornado with blazing suns for eyes. The imagery brings into light his elemental composition of wind, earth, fire, and dominion. In the Winti faith, we find a similar cosmology as in Obeah. For the Winti, Anansi reflects the essence of Anana, the god. The godhood is a network of connections, not unlike the 231 gates in Loria's Kabbalah, and I believe it is such similarities that led to Obeah being seen. That's when it was talking about Kabbalah earlier. It's not the same thing. Practical Kabbalah that influenced Obeah men to resort to such usage of Kabbalah. In its original sense of being a prophetic reception of divine mysteries, the Winti also have a female form of Papa Bones, oh shit, known as Mama Aisa, right? Perhaps borrowed from the Voodoo as Aizan, right? Or Azian, right? And that's what she's known of in the Voodoo. But what's important to understand here, whether it's Samael Lilith, any of these paths always have a representation of the masculine feminine principle. Now, really, if you go back to how this individual priest described in his work of how he raised himself up to see the imagery of Papa Bones, it was very Baphometic-like in nature, if you look at it. It represented to me, when I first read that, it represented to me everything that Baphomet symbolizes. I want to say the word symbolize, right? Baphomet's not a deity. We don't worship Baphomet. If that's how you approach it, that's your business. That's not how it should be looked at. But they described in that imagery what first resonated with me and came to mind. It described the Kundalini rise, right? The fire element, or the earth. It described water. It described air. It had androgyny to it, right? Now we're talking about the feminine aspect of Papa Bones. It has the masculine and feminine, totality, equilibrium, androgyny, all of those things. What's the importance of that? Because that symbol is important to understand, because you need all of those elements to work magic effectively. That's what the symbol of Baphomet should represent to a working black adept or black magician, right? Because you need to have a thorough understanding of what all those elements embody so you can work your magic effectively. So that's what we look at when we look at, and I'm going to get into the sigils in a minute with Papa Bone, which is pretty powerful. And you're going to see very similar to other sigils with path clearing. I'll throw some of them up on there so you can see them. Very similar because, again, a lot of these deities or archetypes deal with path clearing work. You'll see similarities, whether it's Papa Legba in the Voodoo, whether it's La Santísima Muerte, the Holy Death. There's always the similarity in their sigils. Anybody that's a gatekeeper, anybody that's a road path opener that accesses the higher portals of your psyche and your subconscious mind have a similar looking sigil. Is that a coincidence? Absolutely not. It goes to show you that this information has stood the test of time, because as these systems got passed down, it retained some type of similarity. Now, the difference is where you might see a little bit of the influences based on the culture and the time period, language, description. That's going to play an influence, all right? But you're going to see there's always a pattern. If you work these paths and you dabble in different aspects of them, it's going to be clear as day to you. Shit starts to click up here. You're like, holy shit, this shit is all connected. That's what I meant earlier when I said you're going to find out you really don't need no one to show you how to do this if you're really paying fucking attention. What I do in my work with people that contact me for spiritual consultations or readings, what my job is, again, to do is just to reawaken this. And again, if you have worked with me over the years, you know what I'm talking about. I'm going to push you in the right direction. I'm going to tell you what you need to gather. But guess what? At the end of the day, you're going to do the shit yourself. Nobody's going to do it for you. I don't do anything for anybody. That's not how you're going to learn. You're going to find out. And then the greatest reward is getting the email. And I get them from you guys all the time that do work with me. You send me an email. I got it, all the stuff. I did that work you told me to do. And then you give me some positive feedback. It's a good feeling because it shows that, look, you should be proud of yourself. And then people say, oh, Brother Beniti, I appreciate it. No, first thank yourself because you're the one that did it. I mean, I appreciate you thanking me, but really all I did was remind you of what you already knew. That's what a good teacher or elder should do. Not take advantage of you, not try to take you to the cleaners and take your dough. But what they should do for you is, and I know a lot of them aren't gonna, and a lot of people are gonna hate videos like this because it puts a wrench in their hustle game. I'm not here to do that. I'm only here to get compensated for my time when I do work. That's it. And anybody that's worked with me knows I'm very reasonable compared to the other shit that's out there. Because the horror stories I hear. My point is, there's nothing more rewarding when you could look back after doing some work and say, I did that shit myself. Do you know how good that makes an individual feel? You know how self-empowering that is? Do you know how when you can look back and go, I did that shit, right? But when that's why, again, I did a video a while back. When does the student let go of the teacher's hand and become the master themselves? The problem is a lot of people want to be followers. They want to, look, we always, in the spirit of things, should always be a student. Because to me, that represents to wanting to learn. That's not what I'm talking about. Some people don't want to always be up under somebody. Some people always want to be told what to do. They can't think for themselves. They need some guru or somebody that got some title. It makes them feel important if they're being told what to do by that person. To me, that's an individual that will never reach a state of godhood, God or goddess. They'll always be part of the Mickey Mouse Club, the group thing. And when I say the group thing as far as structured organizations that have criterias, rules, and regulations. There's a lot of that shit going on still. And in 2019, that's pretty sad because I look at that as another form of church because that's what church did and is still doing to this day. It creates a structure and a criteria that you must stay within. And if you go outside of that criteria and you break the rules, laws, and regulations, you're not part of the Mickey Mouse Club no more. You see how that works? We've got to get out of that mindset and that way of thinking. And I say this to a lot of the people that are constantly emailing about, I was wondering what you think about, I wanted to get initiated in Palo. And let me reiterate what I always tell you in this email. Might be some of you who are watching now or see this video afterwards. I say this, I say, look, it's not a matter if I say you should be in Palo, get initiated. Now that's something you need. The very fact that you're asking me shows you're confused. And maybe you need to think about it some more. Okay? It's not a matter, what I say is irrelevant. What do you say? My question would be, are you clear this is what you want to do? And if you start your next sentence as, well, there's my answer. You don't even need to finish. If you come and go, yeah, I'm 100% on board. I'm ready to do this. All right, knock yourself out. But when I hear that, once you start your next line starts with that, you don't even need to continue. Now you got to ask yourself, are you just fascinated with the concept of getting initiation or initiated in some of these things? Is that what it is? Is this fascination? Is it a curiosity? Or is it because you're sincerely a seeker and you want to really gain the experience? That's the reason you should be doing it, okay? It is the only reason why to this day, I still belong to some of the orders that I still belong to. Not because I know I'm going to really get anything out of them. And as you saw, I just posted a video on Sunday. I just finished my 10th degree in the Rosicrucian order. There's only 2 more to go. And the 12th degree I'm going to do in Egypt. I just came this far. I want to finish the experience. I'm determined. Not because I really think it's going to give me any super dark or intense secrets. Yes, there's a lot of alchemy in there. Yes, there's a lot of things to learn. Don't get me wrong. And the 10th, 11th, and 12th degree is the degree of Illuminati, right? And I talked about that in that video. If you ain't see it, go look at the one I did Sunday. But my intent is clear why I'm doing it. Because while I was going through these different orders, Masonry, OTO, the Martinist order, Rosicrucians, Theosophical Society, I went through all of that shit. I'm still currently active. Do I go regularly? Absolutely not. I'm just determined to finish certain things out because of the experience factor. Why? Because I can now, what I do in my work, I can utilize that experience in this platform. And I can now tell people, now again, you can find these things out on your own, knock yourself out. But if you make sure your intent is clear that this is why you're doing it. If you're just fascinated with being initiated, you're going to get disappointed. Trust me when I tell you. Shit ain't for everybody. The ritual we got coming up on the 22nd, the ritual of the Sith, the Dark Lords. There's a lot of intensity to the ritual. There's many different facets to this ritual. You will be tried, tested, and proven. I'm not going to give too much of it away, but I'm going to find out who's really dark side. I want to see who really is dark side. And like I told you, if you work with me, and those that know me, if you work with me, there will come a point you will have to show and prove and demonstrate that to me. Not because I'm anybody important. It's just because we don't allow anybody in the circle that's faking the funk. That's what I'm talking about. Okay? Because when you're doing group work, the difference between group work and individual work, the energy needs to be well harmonized. And as you've noticed when we started a few years ago, we've dropped a lot of people along the way, and we picked up a lot of people along the way because some people found out this path ain't really for them. They're not as dark as they thought they were. They're not as, connected to the dead as they thought they were, quote unquote. But we're going to see in this particular work who really likes the darkness. All right. Brother Jay Charles, good to see you, bro. Brother Jack, and Jack knows that's probably me and Jack are like this. Right. We go back, and Brother Jack has been there every step of the way through all of this work. Not just as Jack is somebody now that carries out the work where I got to go back to, and I know I've mentioned this before in the past, 06, and one of his initiations, brother will tell you, he's here right now. Brother passed out. Literally passed out. But I'll tell you what, he got right up like a trooper and, did his thing. And now he's at a point where he is one that is actually administering the work, if that's the correct term, that I can use. And I can use him. Raven Hecker's here. And Raven Hecker, what's unique about her, and you guys know her connection here on this platform and with me, she's been in for a short time. And one thing I would say for her, that's somebody that just dives in. Okay. When I say dives in, yeah, Jack, I know you know what I'm talking about, Brother Jack. When I say somebody that dives in, she does just enough of research on it. She don't dive in blindly, but she ain't one of those people that over intellectualize things. Because some people do that and it fucks them up. They try to figure everything out before they do it. And on this path, you can't figure everything out before you do it. Sometimes you just must let your mind be free and embrace the experience, especially when you're doing ritualistic work, because you never know what's going to happen. And that's a beautiful thing. That keeps you sharp. That keeps you on your toes. I don't ever want to go into any working or ritual knowing exactly what's going to happen. That destroys the whole fucking purpose of it. You should just, look. There's another brother. I don't think he's here right now. Brother A, you know him as, you guys might see him in here as AP, Brother Adler. And when he first started coming to some of the voodoo rituals we were doing, now mind you, this is a Haitian brother, and he knows about voodoo. And the first two he came to, he was, I remember him sitting in the room when the drumming started get going and the spirits started coming down and people started moving. Tanisha's here, right? Tanisha can tell you about her first experience at she was at the Baron Samedi ritual, and I'll never forget. And now, mind you, this was just in the opening, and I never forget. And I think I have a clip of this on video actually, but I won't put that out there because we were filming the altar and stuff. And Tanisha, you're here. If there's something I leave out, you can put something in there. And I remember as the drums. As the drums started going and the energy started to pick up right in the beginning, you just heard this boom, turn around, boom, she's laying out flat on the floor. And I'm saying that to show the intensity sometimes of the energy, and that's actually a good thing because that shows you were able to connect, right? And I'll never forget when, let's get into something else. I will never forget, quote unquote, when you see stuff like that, it leaves a lasting impression because it shows you, one, The work is effective. 2, it affects everybody in different ways. Everybody's not affected the same way. I'm saying that to say, don't gauge your experience by somebody else's, okay? Because when you're gauging it by somebody else's, you're going to get disappointed. You're going to have your own. Now, will there be similarities? Yes, there will. Will it be exactly the same? Absolutely not. But that's the difference, okay? You're not going to be able to figure everything out. Don't try to. And the work we're getting ready to do at the end of the month, it was something that we kind of had to wait to prepare for. Real quick, while I got everybody here, if you came in late, before I continued, I'm going to finish with this last section. I'm going to go to the chat in a little bit. I sent some stuff out today about the rituals, but I also want to remind everybody this Thursday on Primordial Chaos right here, live streaming, and on Primordial Chaos Radio, we're going to have Father Sebastian on live. So we'll be interviewing him about this book, Vampire Magic. We'll get him on more than once. It's not going to be the only time he'll come on. I want to focus on some of his work in detail. I don't want to be all over the place because vampirism, as you know, is a very intricate path with many different levels. All right. So I would like for you guys to come on, but I would also like to see more of you call in and speak and get that personal interaction. And again, I want that so you guys get the opportunity to pick the brains of the people that wrote a lot of these books that we use in our research. This is your opportunity, your chance. I like to know what inspired you. Why'd you do it? Where'd you get this concept from? How'd you come up with this? Why'd you create this? What does this mean? A good thing to do, and I know a lot of people I know are here, have utilized this book in their work. I know I have, and I've made some adjustments. But this is a good time to ask questions. Now, there's a lot of good ritualistic work in it. I plan on asking them about a couple of those rituals in there before we get to the phones and the question portion. But this is your chance to speak with Father Sebastian and pick his brain. Also want to remind people on February 14th, we're going to have Bal Cadman on the show. And as you know, Bal Cadman, he's put out a lot of cult books. He'll be on the 14th. We're going to have Dr. Bynum on again soon, waiting to get a date from him. I got some other people lined up, but I'll unfold that as it goes. I just think it's the time right now to redo some of that stuff and bring on some new people, just so we can get familiar with it. But anyway, let me finish this and then we'll come back. All right. I just want to get through this last section here. So we left off with Aizan or Mama Isa, the yellow python, right? She's caring and benevolent spirit, but she can also take the form of Sophia Bada, who induces bleeding from the genitals and eyes when she takes possession of the Obeah man, or woman. And if you haven't seen this, it's not pretty. When she takes the form, she calls upon dogs and wolves, and with this comes Anima Sola. And Anima Sola, you'll also be familiar with her in voodoo. Bokor Rodney Coleman talked about that spirit last week. Again, make sure you're clear on the difference between a spirit and an archetype. It's not the same thing, okay? There are also chromantists known as Indi, which are the spirits of the indigenous priests and shamans that contributed to the influence the world upon death and teacher spirits. I've shown that before in previous videos. I have a whole altar just dedicated to the Indian shamanic spirits. It's powerful shit. I've actually gone and visited a couple of different mounds. Was recently, February, March of last year, was back up at Ocmulgee Mound in Macon, Georgia. If you've never been to Ocmulgee Mound, it's one of the most, you could just feel the spirits and the energy there, all right? I was traveling with a brother of mine. It's in one of my orders. And he had never been there, and we were traveling through, and he wanted to go. He said, "You've been there?" Yeah. So I said, "I know exactly where it is." We detoured off of 75. We got off, and we spurred a moment, went on top of the ritual mound and the funerary mound, and just spurred a moment, created some work right there on the spot. I had went into they have a gift shop there where the museum is, and went and bought, which I have on my altar, Indian staff, and I did some work with it there, consecrated it, charged it with some energy. And as I'm talking about it now, I can just see, the spirits of those Native American Indian chiefs. And when we went, now the sweat lodge they have preserved, obviously it's in its original composition. It has been preserved. They've done work on it, but they've kept it in its original form, where you can actually go into the sweat lodge. It's off the chain. You can actually go into the sweat lodge. And I remember walking in there, and I've been in there probably 4 or 5 times, maybe more. And you could you could feel the energy of them spirits. And it's a beautiful thing. And, you could hear the voices of them spirits. And I remember when we were up on the funerary mound, we can hear the chanting, of the shamans when we were up on the funerary mound, because anytime from those tribes, the Mississippians, the Choctaws, the Creeks, the Yamasee, all those tribes from the Mississippian area, from Alabama, Mississippi on down to Florida, that was pretty much their territory. And all those different tribes, that was the area that they controlled. And anytime they buried their dead, that's where they did the rituals on that mound. So you could feel, when you're tapped in, you could feel the presence of a lot of that ritualistic work they did. It's off the fucking chain. I'm saying that to say, because there is a path of working with those or Indio, as they call it in Sansei and the 21 divisions, etc. There is an aspect of that in this, because the shaman, and that's why that's why you'll see the title referred to sometimes on this path as an Afro-shamanic witchcraft type of path, because it incorporates all of those elements, Obeah. And again, the reason why this topic came up, I know a lot of you just had emailed me. People requested it in the chat, because I've never done nothing on this. I think because it's a misunderstood path. I don't think many people understand it. I think people confuse it for voodoo, or just what we know as witchcraft on the surface. And there's so much more to it than that. All right. Then it goes on to say, Papa Bones is among some Winti and Wissi, also called King 7, and 7 are the Chromantis that are under his direct ministry. As King 7, he is also known as Yaw, Y-A-W, which signifies fire from heaven. Papa Bones is also associated with Saint Ezekiel, Saint Gabriel, and Saint Expedus, and even Saint Lucia. Now, this is if you're synchronizing it with some of the Catholicism stuff, if that's your choice. All right. Other chromantes are Opete, the vulture that easily possesses the Obeah man, particularly those Obeah men that are ruled by flying totemic forces. Now, you'll see the term taking flight. This is where a lot of the vampiric and shape-shifting comes into play that you might hear on this path. Now, I'm not telling you to accept that if you haven't confirmed it as a fact and experienced it, but I can tell you that is a fact. People have the ability to shapeshift. Okay. I wouldn't, again, if you have not confirmed that for yourself, I'm not telling you to accept that as a fact, but it is a reality on this path. All right. Then it goes on to say, Adiani, the jaguar, is another important chromanti. Then we have restless warrior spirits like Adu, Makuku, Banwaku, Tando, Anaka, Aladi, which are man. Talk about it. I got a fucking migraine just talking about it. Oh, man. Which are chromantis often used by the Obeah men. These chromantis are all Indi and are intimately lodged within the mysteries of Sase Bonsam. So here we are. Because what does Sase Bonsam represent? It embodies that energy of everything on this path. Don't look at that just as a literal deity. Remember, it referred to him as the green monster or the boogeyman of the woods. There is an imagery or a form to it, but don't let that confuse you. It's not a physical form. You know how you could see shadows or auras or however people describe it, energy. Look at it as a energy source. And I liken it to the black flame of what we know when we deal with Egyptian Luciferianism with Set, the real Prince of Darkness, right? That represents that, okay? If we wanted to try to connect it, or what would it be similar to, right? Papa Bones would be the incarnation or the manifestation of that energy, right? That would be how we would connect with the archetype set, right? Which in relation is how it activates our psyche and the prince of darkness or the powers of darkness that reside within. When you apply how Papa Bones, somebody's initiated into the mysteries of Papa Bones and how it's placed on the individual and how it permeates through every part of their DNA and blood, right? So when we say it's placed upon the individual, again, as I said earlier, it's not that something external is coming from spook God in the sky, and we clearly mentioned that in the book. It's not coming from external deity on high. It's awakening those forces that are already within you. They're just lying dormant. Or dormant, I'm saying, not doormat. Fucking doormat is something you step on before you walk in the house. You know what the fuck I meant. Something that lays dormant within you, right? This system is teaching, because remember, one thing that it said, we talked about last week, you as the practitioner have to make sense out of this path. Nobody else can do it for you. There is no blueprint. There is no format. There is no book, because you're going to find out with work like this, it varies from individual to individual. It's up to you as the person to make sense out of it. Nobody's going to do it for you. All right. In addition to we have spirits of the bush, like Apuku, and the spirit of Termite Hill, Akantasi. These are winties or elemental spirits that can be used together with the chromanti to work with Wisi or Obeah. There is also the spirit known as Luango, the spirit of muddy waters. Now, think about, I'm not going to get into it here, but we know a famous blues singer, what was his name, right? Come on, for all you old school heads. You know there was a blues singer called what? Muddy Waters. Well, we'll get into that another time. That is very demanding and claims submission and great respect when called forth. Lastly, we have the mischievous dwarf spirit called Bak Kru, right? Where you get the mythology later on about dwarfs and elves and all that other shit. But really, you could take it back into ancient Egypt, where you have the pygmy deities, right? And what was the most popular pygmy dwarf deity in ancient Egypt? Bes, right? Bes was a deity that migrated from where? Remember, Bes is not part of the last 46 dynasties of ancient Egypt when the Indo-Aryans came in, or what we know as the Hyksos of the last 46 dynasties. Remember, Nubia, right? And this is important to understand. One, there's more pyramids in Nubia or Aswan and Sudan than there is in Egypt itself. Remember, the ancient Nubians were the fathers and mothers of the ancient Egyptian culture and civilization. It started out in Nubia, and that's why I used to call this channel back then Mother Nubia, because that's the point of reference I was connecting to at that time. They brought that deity. Bes is a deity found in ancient Nubia or Aswan, right? What does Bes represent in ancient Egypt? The protector of women and children, right? One of the key things. He protects the child in the womb of the mother, right? You can't find Bes in the later dynastic Egyptian periods as being, okay, as being a point of reference from that time period. He goes back to the Neolithics. What is the Neolithic era, the Neolithic period? Remember, sometimes we get caught up in Egypt because, yes, Egypt is the first great established civilization. But those people we call the Egyptians were the Neolithics that occupied the Nile region before there was any pyramids being built, before there was aprons and all these great relics of what we know as Egypt today, right? We know those people, for lack of a better word, as pygmies and Watusis, right? Right? There was a song years ago called Do the Watusi, right? These are the Neolithics that predated Egypt. You can trace the origin. I'm saying this to show you a lot of these spirits are connected to a period and energy that goes way back then. This is why some people don't want to fuck with this, because it creates that fear. Fear is what's fueled by ignorance. So I'm saying this to bring all this. I'm connecting to what Bes. You're hearing these terms. They're showing you, because they're pulling from different systems, all right? They're pulling from all these different systems, showing you the connection with this. So if we understood the power that we had, not just talked about it, not just sat in lectures and listened to a feel-good speech of how great we were back in Egypt, because that shit gets me nauseous to my stomach. I'm talking about actually took the power and worked with it. All right. This is what this is talking about. But let's continue. All right. Let me just see how much I got there, because I don't want to do a third part of this. All right. I'm almost there. And then I'm going to do the call to Papa Bones. So hopefully some of y'all don't throw up. Let me stop. And then I just want to show some of the sigils of Papa Bones, Anima Sola on this path. And I especially want you guys to see this one here. It looked just like, well, I'll show you guys. But anyway, all right. All right. Okay, so we left off with the dwarf spirits. Let me find that. Okay, Bakru, who is a servant of Sase Bonsam and loves trickery, alcohol, and jewels. Who's that sound like? We'll get in that minute. We also have other spirits of shamanic nature, like Morakoi, the tortoise, Sarato, the snake, Mothra, the moth, and Anansi, the spider, to mention a few. The signature of these spirits are very simple and figurative. After all, the craft of the Obeah man is a mystery. Everything is developed as a consequence of true rapport with the spirits of Obeah and the possession of the Obeah. In this sense, the craft of each Obeah man is a secret art that is developed between the Obeah man and the spirit, such as trance states, possession, shamanic journeys, and automatic writings were the tools. I was introduced, but for other Obeah men, meaning the author, the tools of ingress might be different. The Obeah will always forge a path unique in so much as that it will resist any system or order that makes sense for many. Obeah is and will be a sorcerous path for the empowered individual. A simpler way for the Obeah man to work with these spirits consists of erecting a simple altar. All right, so now what I want to talk about real quick before we get to the invocation. Here's a simple way, a basic, if your interest is working with this in some shape, form, or fashion. A simpler way for the Obeah man to work with these spirits consists of erecting a simple altar where he will have present a glass of apricot brandy, yellow, red, black, and white candles. You might have actually, you know where they showed this? Yeah, you guys probably seen this. This actual thing here. If you remember the movie years back with Steven Seagal, what was it, Alfred Justice? You remember the dread in there with the light eyes? Everybody wanted to go to heaven, but nobody wanted to die. What I'm about to read in here, if you go back and watch that movie, look at his altar. And I'm telling you that because of this. And that movie came out in 1986, I believe. That's one of the first things I noticed when I watched that movie. All right. And that was back then. All right. So here, let me say it again. Erect a simple altar, present a glass of apricot brandy, a yellow, red, black, and white candle, or candles. You could put it as little as many, but make sure those colors are on there, and we'll show you why. Under the altar, you will draw a seal of a simple circle with the cross in the middle. I'm about to show you that. The cross should enter through the circle on all four edges. Sound very familiar? There's always path opening, gatekeepers, opening, accessing something. He will then draw another circle around the altar. He might use corn flour, cascarilla. I like to use cascarilla. It works. I like to use cascarilla on cement, concrete. It works like a charm. Cornmeal can work. It can be a little complicated drawing the sigils or doing this type of work with the cornmeal. I found it to be, I know some people do it. They have no problem with it. I find the cascarilla works a lot better because I have a whole area where I do this type of stuff on the ground, but the surface is concrete. Because as you know, the cascarilla is like a chalky substance. And they come in the little white cups. You can get them in botanicas, spiritual stores. I like to just take it out of the cup and kind of hold it like chalk. It almost feels like chalk if you get a good quality. And anytime I'm drawing sigils, if I'm working with voodoo or if I'm working with this type of work, I like to do it straight on the floor on concrete surface. That's important. All right. All right. Pemba, even say you could use chalk here if you decide to, or whatever he uses to mark spirit signs. He should have a large piece of paper ready and can perform the ritual in one of two ways. In both ways, alcohol, rum, gin, vodka. I'm gonna show you the shit I like to use. This shit right here is fire. Let me show you this real quick. when I'm working with these spirits, because they're straight fire spirits, this is the shit that I like to use. And this is cane rum, right? Caribbean rum. It's not white. You see how it's got a little color to it? And you see it's 151 proof. This shit will it's almost 77% alcohol, right? 151 proof. When I say this shit will put fire, this shit is straight fire. To me, it's better than fire water. I tend to use this if I'm doing work with the Voodoo spirits or this particular ritual or type of work here. It's not that expensive. It's I think it's like $20 or it's not that expensive. But if you really want it now, when we do bringing down the spirit, that's a whole nother story. But just a suggestion, you don't have to use this one, but I would recommend when you're doing work with these spirits, this is just me. The white rum to me is not as effective. Get that cane rum that's got a little bit of a color to it, and it's a high proof. Okay, and it's, like I said, it's almost 80% alcohol. When you trust me, when you drink it, now when the spirit has taken over you, you don't, I don't feel it. You can start guzzling. I'm not even a drinker, but when you're possessed in the spirit, I can drink a whole bottle and it doesn't. It just you're in the spirit. It doesn't bother you. I'm not a drinker when I'm not in the spirit. I can't even drink it because I just don't drink alcohol. But that's a whole nother story. But my suggestion for this type of work, all right? Then it goes on to say you can use rum, gin, or vodka. I prefer the cane rum, the Caribbean cane rum. A cigar or pipe are necessary. I have both. All right. You can switch that up either with internal recitation of the chosen deity's name or recitation in a monotone whisper. He draws the sign that occurs to him in pure automata. Another procedure is as follows. The Obeah man will smoke large amounts of cigar and sprinkle the area of working with strong alcohol, drinking some yourself as well, which I think is me personally is important. As you're offering to the spirits, you should ingest some too, because you're trying to make that connection. You're connecting everything together, meaning not only are you just trying to invoke them or petition them, but what you're trying to offer a part of yourself. When I say offer a part of yourself, meaning you're willing to merge with that energy and connect. You understand? To me, it's important. Is it mandatory? Absolutely not. All right. Then he will start talking to the spirit in the mother tongue or any other language that feels natural for him to speak. And don't be surprised if you just start speaking shit that don't make sense to you. It may sound like gibberish at the time, but that'll make itself clear. He will blow cigar smoke to the corners of the altar in the working area and shout for the spirit. He will use whatever he knows to work to induce trance state of possession. Now, anybody that's come to work that we've done down here, the drum is what does it for me. With the invocation and the drum, and I know Brother Jack, Brother Mike, they know certain drum. They'll play certain patterns and rhythms. Even with Jack, I know when Jack gets that, he's got that I like to call it that monster spirit energy. Like sometimes I'll grab him and we'll go like chest to chest because it's like a raging spirit. It's the best way I can describe it. But what brings it out, why I say it in this type of work, whatever work you need to do, this is to me the importance of the drum in this type of work. Because the vibrations and the frequencies and the different tones of the patterns of the drum induce those states of trance state or possession or whatever you want to call it. I don't like the word possession because it's religious and people spook the fuck out with it because they don't understand it. Because here's the difference. When the spirit mounts you or possesses you, you have now merged yourself one with the energy. So I say that's the correct way to approach it, because when you say possessed, that brings up religion and people think that there's, again, some external force taking over. No, what you've done is you raise your vibration and frequency up to such a high level or state of consciousness, you open up portals of your psyche and you activate energy centers where now you embody the spirit. You're not looking at it from the spirit. Actually, you become one with it. So what starts to happen? You start seeing through the eyes of the spirit. You start feeling, meaning we look at this in other paths as wearing the deific mask or seeing through the eyes of God. You become God. And when working with these type of systems, you should want to get yourself to this point. to a state of a trance state of possession so you can feel the power of the spirit. You can feel the higher aspect of yourself, for lack of a better word. And again, some of you I know I've worked with, I've seen it. You've been at some of these type of works, rituals, and that's why I spread them out, because they can be a little bit intense. I know Mama Muerte, who's not here now. I know shit just happens because what comes into play here when, and I like the term that the author uses here, a trance state. Because what brings that trance state, whether it's it could be a mantra, it could be a chant, it could be moving your body in a certain particular method, in a rhythmic motion that's connecting with an energy aspect that's connected to yourself. It could be stomping your foot a certain way. If you've ever been to any of these gatherings, on the surface, it can appear a little odd. Why is that person moving like that? Why are they moving their arm? Because they've tapped into a certain, you may not understand it on the surface. It might look a little odd to you, but I can only relate to what connects me to it is the frequency and the vibration of the drum. Man, you start playing them drums the right way, in addition to the work, okay, it connects. It's hard to put it into words. I'm trying to use terms the best way to put it into words. Yeah. All right, so let me finish this. So I'm running way behind. I want to get to your questions. I'm almost there. Damn, where was I? Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, the manner of serving as a receiver for the force is called, they can be used as charms and for healing purposes. The sacred dice are also used as an oracle, and it can be used by the spirits known as the Guanguela and Gideshu. The hands of Papa Bones are called upon to give true answers as described in the 3rd chapter. The spirits of Obeah are infinite. Papa Bones is said to consist of as many spirits himself as there are bones in the body. We went through that in the last one. And go back and look at that. We went through the many different aspects. All right. He is a dynamic and deep vault of magical possibility. The spirits that attach to the Obeah man are discovered by a magical trance, quite similar to the shamanic vision quest. There are some components of importance here. First of all, the Obeah man needs to sit down at a tree of bad repute, a tree known for its capacity for cursing. All right, this I'm going to skip. All right. That's if you're going to go. I'm not going to get into that. Let's get into the call to Papa Bones. All right, so there's the basic way. If you decide to set up an altar and invoke Papa Bones. But again, let me say this. All right. Said it last week. I'm going to say it again. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Don't take this shit lightly. Okay? Okay. Again, if you always approach your work, and you should do this with all work, if your intent is sincere, you're focused, and you're clear in what you're doing, you'll never have a problem. I don't care what it is you're working. Don't be all half-assed and iffy and, curious, because, that old saying, curiosity kills the cat. I've seen this on the flip side, like other systems. I've seen this fuck a lot of people up because they were kind of just wanted to go into it because they were curious. Well, you should be on curiosity now. All right. You should be at the point when you're setting out to do work like this, you should be confident, focused, clear on your intent. If you have all those things, you will never have a problem. If you're going into it because I just want to see what happens, you're gonna get burnt. I've watched this psychologically fuck people up is what I'm getting at. There's some of them are never the same after they do this type of work. I know a brother to this day that attended a ceremony out on the beach, and that was back in, and it wasn't a ceremony I was doing. I was there. It was somebody else was doing something, and we were invited. And I personally, in the circle of people, I didn't think that this individual probably at that time shouldn't have fucked with it because of stuff that was going on in that person's personal life. He just has never been the same since then. All right. But anyway, the last thing I want to finish with, call the Papa Bones, right? To me, this would be the first step if you want to incorporate this element in your work. You know, do the basic setup of an altar. Now, again, this is if you want to. Now, again, if you want to work with this on some level, as the book makes clear, this is a simple way to do it. For maybe somebody that's not going to be full blown exclusive to it 24/7, which I'm not. I do like to work with it as best or incorporate it in my work where I see fit. But if you use these techniques that are very simple, call the Papa Bones. The Obeah man will present 2 yellow candles at the center of the altar, flanked by 1 red at the left and 1 black at the right. There's that red and black, right? Passion and power, right? You see that? We use that in all the work we do here. He will pour apricot brandy into a large jug and present it in front of himself. Now, the apricot brandy can be a little pricey. It depends on where you get it. And then light a dark aromatic cigar and burn frankincense. He will use the following key to summon Papa Bones and will use these keys to open the door for trance. Cache, cache, amo. Father of Bones, Magid of Bones, Kankaru of Bones, Fenpin of Bones, shivering in 1,000 of suns, darkness caught at the summit of the 3rd sun. Pass on in between the scent of death, blowing in the woods, close the moon, bring shadow to the sun, bite through, ka, 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 kahete. And here's the seal. I'm gonna show you 2 seals here. And this call is done to summon the doopies and their spirit guides. Because there's not much difference between Sase Bonson and Papa Bones. Remember, it's connected. The energy and we went over that, all right? Here's the seal of Papa Bones. I don't know if you guys can see that right there. That's the seal you want to draw on the floor that I was talking about, right? Now, let me show you this here. This is the seal of Anima Sola, Abyssinia, or Clarissa, or Anima Sola, right? See that one right there? And then I want to show you this one here, another path opening seal. And this looks very simple. Now, this is, when we were talking about earlier, the Morocco, or Moroccoy, as some say, the turtle is considered to be the prophetic power of Papa Bones, right? It's another path, but look at the Sajia. Now, if you look at it close, it looks like the top shell of a turtle, right? If you see it close, all right? It looks like the top shell of a turtle, but you see the point in the center, very similar to the Holy Death, very similar to Papa Legba. And in the 4 directions, the different paths. And then when you look at it closely, look what's going on the outside, right? There's a science with the square within the circle. And you have the elements that are operating outside of what we know as person, place, thing, right? And so just want to put that up there. But anyway, there's more. Can't cram this all in. I may revisit this maybe again, because there's a lot to go through to this. I just wanted to do these 2 videos to kind of give people a general idea. All right. And just saying that little invocation gets me takes me to a whole nother state. All right. So what we're going to do, give me 1 second. I'm just going to go replenish this. I'm going to start at the top. If you haven't typed any questions in, I'm going to take the next hour or so to answer some questions. Just bear with me 1 sec. I'll be right back. All right. And I know somebody had just texted me. Let me put this up here. If you go to my YouTube page, the community section, all the announcements that I make, I want to make this clear. All the announcements that I make and events and things that's going on is on the community section of the page. So you will see, let me just show you this, the flyers for the events that went out there. If you didn't get them, you could also access them on the community page. That's the ritual we get ready to do. You should see that posted in the community section. That's going to be the ritual on the 22nd. If you're on the list, you got it already, and you should see this one up there, okay? That's the drumming ritual. Now, the drumming, anybody can attend that. You can bring kids. It's an open event, and then we do a little class afterwards. But obviously, this one is by invite. You got to be invite. The event, the show coming up on this Thursday with Father Sebastian is also posted in the community section. Again, he'll be here to talk about his book, Vampire Magic. And again, we'll have Val Cadman on February 14th. All right. So I wouldn't miss those shows. Like, I'm going to keep pumping them out there, putting them out there, reminding people this is your chance to ask these authors questions. We read these books. This is where we get a lot of our information from. So take advantage of it. All right. All right. So let me go up. I'm going to start at the top. Be Like Water, Brother Beniti, I got the Satanic Bible you had recommended. Pretty good so far, and I'm glad. If you haven't gotten it, Dr. Michael Aquino has revised the Satanic Bible that Anton LaVey put out, and it's unique in my opinion. I don't talk about it a lot, and I won't get into it here in the open forum. I am an adept in the Temple of Set, so I'm very familiar with Dr. Aquino's work. Mindstar is another book. If you don't have that in your collection, I would get Mindstar. That's not for the weak-minded. That's some shit that'll really get your mind going in. Get Mindstar if you don't have that too, Brother Be Like Water and anybody else listening. The Satanic Bible it's more from a Setian perspective. It deals with the aspect of Set as the Prince of Darkness. It's got all 19 parts of the eternal word of Set, the invocation of Set. What's unique in there, if you're familiar with the Book of Belial and the Satanic Ingredients to Black Magic, that's in the original Satanic Bible, you're going to really love this one. I appreciate it more because it's dealing with it from the aspect of Set as the Prince of Darkness. But it's a great book, so glad that you got it. And I will be tapping into that soon. That's one of my next projects as far as getting that. I want to get that out to people, and we just did some work out of that not too long ago down here. We utilized the 19 parts of the eternal word of Set. We did it in somebody I know here probably remember. I think it was not this one. It was 2 months ago, about a month or two ago. And it was some powerful shit. We did all 19 parts of the eternal word of Set. It was some nice shit. All right. Be Like Water, brother. Would you do a video on Odin and the Left-Hand Path in the future? I'm reading a book, and I think I would definitely consider that. And somebody, I don't know if it was you, somebody had brought that up. What I would like people to do is, I'm gonna be honest with you people, and those close to me know I forget shit. If I don't, send me an email as a reminder if stuff like that, like topics, or if somebody had mentioned something and I said I was going to do it, and I'll get sidetracked quick because once I'm dealing with something, I'm just locked in. I'm focused on it. So Be Like Water, send me an email to remind me, and I would definitely add that to the to-do list. All right. Okay. Again, peace, greetings to everybody. If I can greet you personally, just for the sake of time. Nikki Bay, do you have a video about working with the bloodline ancestors? Yes. I don't know if you're new to the channel. I don't know how often you've been here. There are quite a few. If you go into the archives, there should be several different ones there. Working with your ancestors, activating bloodline spirits. I also got information in a few of them. If you're adopted and you don't know who your parents are. There are people in that situation. They don't have no history of their DNA or their genealogy. We talked a little bit about that last week with Bokor Rodney Coleman. We did talk about DNA tests, but I always recommend get a good quality one. The surface ones that are cheap can be a little flimsy. They're not as accurate. Some, if you have a facility where you can actually go there and get the swab or the sample, it's personal. But there are some, in my opinion, I know that people have a difference of opinion on it. That's one way to go, because I think what that helps, one, outside of being able to identify through direct family and lineage, because we could probably all can trace to a certain extent back 3 or 4 generations if you're connected with your family in some shape, form, or fashion. But you should also go back, understand your bloodline, your blood type, and what's part of that DNA, because it's going to help identify your personality, your characteristics, and your traits. But yes, there are videos scattered throughout. Just go back, because I think on the channel I got close to 300 videos on here going back a few years. So yeah, where they are in the titles, they'll have ancestor in them somehow. Just when you get some time, if you're brand new to the channel, not sure, just go in the archives. All right, what else we got? Demetrius Clark, there's supposed to be a video of a bishop saying the exact same thing about the church's creation of hell. Yeah, I do remember that. I can't remember the name of the bishop. Can't remember from what country, but that was in reference to earlier. I was watching the Robin Hood movie, the latest one that came out not too long ago with Jamie Foxx, who I thought did a great job in there. I know the movie didn't get the greatest of write-ups, but there was a lot of science in there. Well, there's a cardinal in there, you know, when they're having their little scandalous meetings behind closed doors. He says, when they're talking about duping the masses and keeping the people under control, he said that, fear is one of the greatest tool or arsenals in the bag that the Catholic Church uses. And he said, why do you think they created the concept of hell? To keep people in a state of fear. And I apply that to why a lot of people are still stuck like Chuck in this day and time. Because of fear. Might be on a multitude of different levels, but it's because of fear. Fear can be just afraid to try something new. That's a fear. I'm not talking, when I say fear, let's get this clear. We're not talking about horror movie fear, right? That's one type of fear. That's just being completely spooked the fuck out. Fear could be fear of the unknown. That's a fear. That's a phobia. Fear to try a new food, right? Fear to try a new sexual position. Those are fears. Fear based on the unknown. And if you have so much fear because of the unknown, it can keep you controlled. And this is how religion's been able to control the masses for many, many years. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Fear of the unknown. Okay. So if I create a concept that if you're good, you're going to get rewarded with this place where you're going to be floating around on the clouds with these little fat kids in diapers, and which makes no fucking sense. Or if you're bad, you're going to go to this hot, scorching place where some monster with pitchforks is going to, come on. How old are we people? It's 2009. We're grown fucking adults. That's mythology. It's man-made mythology. So in reference to Demetrius' statement, when we were talking about that earlier, if you came on late, they utilize that concept. All right. Sister Oni says, bottom line is that nobody is perfect, but on the path, you got to work on your bullshit. Yes. And earlier we were talking about that. Again, some people get caught up like other people just talking about dealing with your shit. And they're not even dealing with their own shit themselves. All they do is telling other people to deal with their shit, but they ain't got their shit together. We don't want to be those type of people on this path. If we're telling somebody to do that or giving somebody instruction and guidance to do that, we better well ourselves be dealing with our own shit. Okay. So that's important, because I was also mentioning earlier when we were talking about, remember, in Trinidad, there's a large cult following of Kali Ma, right? We were talking about that last week, a little bit about that in the beginning of the show. Kali Ma is used as a destructive, in a good way, a destructive road clearing archetype that can clear away a lot of your bullshit, help you address it, get it in order. I was mentioning that last week, and I think a previous video a few weeks ago. I get a little nauseated because a lot of the shit you see out here on Cali, or a lot of the people that are talking about Cali, a lot of YouTube videos or books or platforms, kind of like they do Oshun and Ifa, as if everything is just feminine and sexual. And that's only such a small part of the truth in working with that energy. it's very warrior and aggressive and intense by nature, and it can bring about great change that you need in your life. To me, that's more important. I would never instruct anybody to go do Varma Marga and Tantra with Kali and you're fucked up, you're not right. Because remember, raising that Kundalini can be painful if you're jacked up. Everybody thinks Kundalini is always a pleasant experience. It's not. And if you've worked with Kundalini on multiple levels, you know it's not pleasant all the time. So don't get caught up in the, what I like to call the Hollywoodness of it, that everything is just, oh, I'm going to go work Tantra and Varma Marga with Kali, and I'm going to be this great sexual black magic goddess or whatever, God, whatever the fuck. That's not going to happen if you're not dealing with your bullshit, as we say, quote unquote. Right? And I always refer people to Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum's book when he talks about Dravidian, Hindu, or left-hand path Tantra. He talks about the importance of being in the right frame of mind. And that's why I'm going to get him back on the show. And we're going to go revisit some of those topics in a different way. I love Dr. Bynum because he, being a doctor, a psychologist, and being a man that's traveled the world, but he's been initiated in a lot of these systems we're talking about. He's been initiated in some aspects of the Dravidian system. That coupled with being a doctor, a psychologist, he brings to the table, in my opinion, the psychological aspect that I think a lot of people don't address in spirituality. I think that gets overlooked. I think people think they can just get right on the path. Now, he also stresses in that book, and if you don't have it, get it, Dark Light Consciousness by Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum. It doesn't mean you can't do work. Because I remember somebody had posed him a question on one of the shows in the past. Well, if you're dealing with psychological issues and you know it, can you still do work? Yeah, you can, but you need to know what parameters of that work you can do. You need to know what could be detrimental until you get, in a sound mind, sound body. And there's very easy ways to find out. Because next question, well, how do I know? Trust me, there's ways to find out. I work with people like that. Some of you that I work with right off the bat in consultations, I'll tell you right off the gate, I could see what your problem is. You got so many different voices running in and out of your head constantly. Your thoughts are not centered. You're not focused. I literally will be doing a consultation or a reading with somebody, and I'm hearing all the voices in their head, and I'm like, holy shit, hold on, let's slow down. Stop. And some of you's in here, you know what I'm talking about. That's your problem right there, because part of this path too is being in a state of stillness or nothingness. I'm not going to get into that now. If you do not condition your higher self, you can never be receptive of the right advisors or voices you need to tap into to start pushing you in the right direction. Most people struggle in their work because they're all over the fucking place. They're here, they're there, but they can't make any sense of it. It's like having a recipe for this great dish, but you don't know how to put all the ingredients together. It's a common problem I see with a lot of people, trust me. So yes, we have to deal with our shit, all right? All right, peace out. Peace out. People don't want to be responsible for their actions. They don't trust themselves, learning that myself for myself, and that's an excellent point. And that's one of the key steps on this path. Let me reiterate this, okay? One of the key steps on this path, okay, is in relation, we're always responsible for our actions. What do I mean? You've heard this many times on many videos, many different other places. You've heard me say this clearly. We take with full part of being a god or goddess, step one, whatever you want to call it, path to self-mastery, God, goddess, is taking responsibility for all your actions, right? Your successes as well as your failures. Part of the path of growing and really transforming on this path is accepting your failures and saying, I fucked up. That's on me. Not blaming somebody because, one, you don't have the money that somebody else has. Two, you don't know what that person knows. Three, you don't have the same physical things that they may have. And then find some external thing. One person it's tough for me to work with in consultations and spirit work is somebody that plays the blame game. Because if you've worked with me in that area, I don't sugarcoat it. I'll say, well, stop. I couldn't care less to hear who you think that's you. That's all bullshit. When you start taking on that mindset, all right, you start to take on, whether you're conscious of it or not, a mentality of failure. Trust me when I tell you, and you're not even conscious of it. So taking responsibility for your actions is a very important, don't overlook that as something simple. It might sound very basic. It's a lot more difficult than it sounds, all right? It's not, I mean, it's not as easy as it sounds. It's a lot more difficult. So give yourself a pat on the back too for your successes. So it's the flip side to that. So it works both ways. Matter of fact, in Vampire Magic, in the very beginning of the book, it says right in the beginning, and I'm going to focus on that on the show in the beginning, the vampire never takes themselves, the vampire master or black adept never takes themselves out of the equation, because when they do, they're not in control anymore. Focus on that for a second. That's one of the core principles of vampirism. You are the center and the focal point of everything that resonates around you, right? And two, with that comes the responsibilities or being responsible for your actions. Once you take yourself out of the equation, what it means, that statement, you're not in control anymore when you start blaming external things, when you start blaming external forces for your shortcomings. So now you are now prey. You're not predator no more. You now become prey. You're open game. And you never want to present yourself as prey amongst people that study vampirism, because they can drain the fuck out of your energy without you even knowing it. Okay? So, very important statement, all right? Yes. Energy, like Oni says, energy vampires go to rituals to suck energy from powerful people. Always understand, there's always a form of vampirism at play at all times throughout the course of your day. There's always a giving and a taking in everything that you do, right? When you're doing videos like this, you're giving. It's not so much, you could say, well, you can tap in and feed off of some people's energy. Yeah, to an extent. But you can be more victimized because there's so many people in here. And if they're trying to do the same, you're battling varying different levels of energy. So in this case, I would have to accept the fact that there would be more giving than receiving on my part. Understand that throughout the course, when you're at work, running a business, just doing your everyday chores and tasks, there's always a giving and receiving process, right? Even when you go to the grocery store to go shopping, right? The giving is you got to get yourself, whether it's throw on just a pair of shoes, you got to get yourself prepared. You got to grab your car. You got to get in your car. You got to burn gas. You got to take effort and energy. If the store is 2 minutes away or 15 minutes away, then you got to go in and round up. Then you're interacting with people. So there's a giving, and if you analyze your day, there's a constant exchange. There's always a giving and a taking going on simultaneously. That's what it means when we talk about predator and prey. You got to understand that. And a vampire knows how to harmonize that, and knows when they're giving too much of themselves, they can get drained. And when they're absorbing too much, they can get drained. But anyway, we'll get into that actually Thursday night. I'm sure we'll get into a lot of that with Father Sebastian. All right. All right, Sister Tanisha, T. Carter, how were some of these archetypes created? Could I create my own archetype? I imagine that I could create my own archetype. Yes, you can. Absolutely. 100% you can. Remember, we have to first establish what the word archetype is. Archetype is not just likened, again, as I said before in the past, to a physical deity, right? An archetype can be a concept, a system of spirituality. Archetype could be a particular system, an order of doing things. An archetype can be a grimoire, right? Or what they call a grimoire. And an archetype could be a deity, because the deity has different character or archetypes, right? So yes, your greatest archetype or your real self is what? And you took the last class, your personal daemon. Demonic integration shows you how you do that, right? The pandemonium mandala shows you how you do that. Vampire magic shows how you can create servitor spirits to do your work for you. And I've always said, you can go back on all those, the most powerful archetypes or deities are the ones that you create yourself, right? Because remember, the existing archetypes are platforms that we're familiar with, right? We use them only because of what they represent. Is it mandatory? No. Is it to me, in my opinion, it's more helpful that you can use as a focal point. But in addition to using the existing platforms that we're used to based on history and culture, we definitely should be doing some of that self-created work. So that's an excellent question. That is a good point. And those that are taking the class know that's one of the things I'm big on and teach people from the get-go. The foundation is activating your personal daemon and becoming aware. And we've gone through that step-by-step process. The next session will be going in more depth, more detail. We touched on the surface, but in that setting, as you know, it's personal. We're all in a group, and there's just things we can do there that I wouldn't do in an open platform like this. But it's an excellent question, and the answer is most definitely yes. All right. All right, next question. Only says, archetypes, esoterical, and anthropomorphic imagery are the true understanding, and that's a good way to look at it, of symbolism. You got to study to understand any spiritual system. You should always look at the archetypes from an esoterical aspect, not an exoteric. Exoteric people that are stuck in external worshiping things. These are your people that claim to be Kemetic, and they're saying prayers to Osiris. What the fuck are you praying to? These are your exoteric religious people who think they're not religious. They claim to be woke and conscious, but really by nature, they're still very religious. These are your other people in Ifa that give offerings of bananas to Shango and go, look, Shango's eating the bananas. Well, common sense tells you if you leave bananas out, we all have bananas. We buy them from the grocery store. If they stay on your countertop for a while and you don't eat them, what happens to the bananas, people? They start to get ripe and decay. But if you want to think Shango is literally eating the bananas, power to you. I can say the same for a lot of foods and fruits. Apples, same thing. If the apple stays out for a while, what starts to happen? It gets soft, mushy. It starts to discolor. It starts to rot eventually. If you want to look at that from a religious, exoterical mindset and say, oh, Shango is eating it. If it works for you, cool. Look, remember, anything can be whatever you want. That's what black magic is about. But I look at things from a Luciferian mindset. And in the Luciferian principles that I use, I don't ever look at anything like that. That's too aesthetic for me. It's too external and it's too religious. Now, remember, I also understand as a Luciferian, if that's how you do it and it works for you, I get it. But I could also, you have to also get, I have the right to disagree respectfully, of course. I'm not going to bash nobody if that's what they do. And there are people that have emailed me. They're still very aesthetic. They tell me they're on this path to an extent, but they're still very aesthetic. And that's okay. But I'm not coming from that perspective. I just want to be clear. So symbolism is very important because the archetype represents the form of a symbol too. Because when you look at Tahuti, what's the first thing you see, right? You see Tahuti in most images. He's got the quill. He's the scribe, intellect, knowledge, wisdom. Right when I look at it, it activates that intellect, that knowledge and wisdom. I look at Sekhmet, or I look at Set, or I look at Kali, and they all carrying the Pekibet knife of separation. It automatically communicates knowledge and wisdom to my mind of separation, warrior, fighting, nonconformist, devourer. All that can be utilized in your work. We got something coming up with Sekhmet, but I ain't gonna talk about that now. But all of that can be utilized in your ritualistic work. That also helps you identify when I'm creating a ritual working for a specific purpose, working with an archetype. How do I know which one to work with? By what they represent via the archetype. Because all of those deities symbolize and represent a certain aspect of consciousness, right? That's how you identify. So if I want to do healing work, I got to find a deity that deals and is symbolic and connects with healing energy. If I got some shit I want to deal with, I need an aggressive warrior clearing path energy. I got to go fuck with Kali, Sekhmet, a holy death, something like that. It's very easy. This is how an adept is able to identify areas in their life that they need to work on. It's that simple. And I show you a lot of this stuff, not just here in the main videos. I do it here to an extent, but that's what a lot of the personal classes are for, because it's a different vibe, different setting, and it gets detailed and intricate, and it's a little bit more than what we do here. This is great, but it's a different work. And I know some of you in here that take the classes, so you know what I'm talking about. It's not quite the same thing, all right? And I'm not just trying to plug the classes in. I'm telling you to take that. If you do take it, you'll see it when you experience it, because like I say, that's not why I'm throwing it out there. All right. All right. What else we got? All right, good comment by T. Carter. Tanisha, you have to know what you know, research, listen, and seek answers from within. Learn to trust yourself. I mean, self-explanatory. I don't even need to elaborate on that. Oni comment. Nobody knows all. That's why paths like this are a life's journey. You're always traveling the path. And there's an old saying amongst sages and mystics, a wise man knows he knows nothing. If you wake up one day and think you got it all figured out, you're dead. You might as well just kill yourself. The day you stop seeking knowledge, the day you stop trying to grow, experiment, and learn new things, you're done. You've pretty much reached your potential. It's over for you. So yeah, it's always a continuing learning process. Oni says, that's the difference between a Google scholar and a YouTube teacher. Brother B got real experience, proof of it, not PowerPoints and all that. Yes. And again, there's others. There's plenty others out there, such as myself. I'm more old school. If you've come to my classes and work with me, we do some stuff. I'm not a PowerPoint person, really. I'm real old school. My lazy ass will just throw books on the screen like I did earlier. To me, it's in here. And this is the only PowerPoint that I need, because everything, when I'm teaching and talking about this stuff, it's pure love for it. And it's like, it's ingrained in here, because I could just flip from this to something else, just like by the snap of a finger, and there's others I know that are the same way. That shows to me that an individual really, one, they're dedicated to it. They're about it. As we say, they're about it. It's not just talk to me. And that's why, like, one of the reasons because it was complicated, I went through sections of a book in this. This is why you see I don't really use books no more in the videos, because if you go back to the first couple of years I was doing videos, I never used any books. Then the last year or so, I started using books. I thought it would be a good reference point, but it got kind of boring to me. It's just not my style. I like to just, as we say in the hip hop world, I like to freestyle with it, come off the top of the dome. It just flows better with me. Now, I know that everybody's got their own method of teaching. So if you use PowerPoints or books, I mean, that's cool. But I'm just talking about for myself. And I'm not judging or criticizing anybody that does. But to Oni's statement, there are some people that can't do shit without PowerPoints and books and whatever. And it's pretty pathetic. And it becomes boring and mundane. That's just me. T. Carter says, yeah, I'm excited about the upcoming show. Again, we're going to have, I got to keep plugging it in because it's only 2 days away. Yes, do not miss Thursday night. We're going to have Father Sebastian here talking about vampire magic. I think it's going to be a really good show, and he seems pretty excited to come on. I'm looking forward to it myself. I've never interviewed him. This will be my first time interviewing him. So I would really like you guys to really try. I know a lot of you were in the chat last week when we had Bokor Rodney Coleman on. We had only a couple people called in. I would like you guys to really interact. You can still watch it on YouTube. That's cool. But call in, man. When it comes time for them questions, call in. Get that personal interaction. It's different than just, watching. It gives you guys a chance to call in also and talk to me. It's just a different vibe, and that's the purpose of the radio show, to give that personal interaction. I mean, take advantage of it when we do it. All right. What else we got? Oni says shamanism is the truth, and it is. And shamanism is a great path. All right. T. Carter, excellent. This is awesome. Thank you, Brother B, for the YouTube videos, the show, and your continued commitment. Now, I thank you guys, because if you guys don't show up, there is no show to do. And again, I've said this before in the past. I don't do this full time. I know there's some people that are on these platforms all day, people like Sa Netta, and this is what they do for a living. I do this just for the simple fact because I love to do it. I do personal spiritual work on the side just for the love of it. And as I said before, I only charge for my time. I don't make a living of it. There's some people that's what they do for a living. That's their livelihood. This is not my livelihood. I mean, if YouTube went away tomorrow, it wouldn't affect me in one shape, form, or fashion. I have business. I do things. Okay. Unfortunately, there are some people that rely on it as their everyday livelihood. I don't. I say that to say, I just love to do this. That's it. It's that simple. It's something I've been doing for a long time. Woke media. Okay, Baku. Yep, true. They eat bananas and milk and are able to grant wishes. Yeah, when you get into a lot of these systems, and I didn't really go into a lot of the spirits of nature in the forest. I may revisit this a little later down the road. You will see a lot of connection to the Ashanti. We went into all this, the Akani. We went through all this last week. A lot of West African spirit. There are that. You'll see some voodoo, but the beauty about Obeah is it really, the structure of it, if there is such a thing, in my opinion, is not. But for lack of a better word, the whole gist of it, again, you as the person on the path, you're the one that has to make an understanding and a sense of it. So there is no, set structure. Trina Hurt, all right, Muddy Water. Yeah, we were talking about the blues singer. Yeah. All right, what else we got? I only said my mom was a shamanic woman. She ain't need nothing but your hands and she could read you. Yeah, there's when people got them gifts. Me, I just go with the vibe. But there are people, man. I've met some real gifted people over the years when it comes to spiritual work. One thing I would say, my godmother was phenomenal. And she was so phenomenal, and I don't know if Brother Jack is still here because he's been at those back during then at those Egoon gatherings we used to have. And she's so powerful, she brings out my capabilities. And that's one thing I always have respect for her. And when we used to do the misas, Egoon ceremonies, how they used to work, and I still do them occasionally once in a while here and there. How they work, if you've ever been to a misa in that system, it's the basic opening you do. Everybody's sitting in a circle and we put a chair in the middle and we basically the spirit will call a particular individual. We just tell them to sit in the center and we just go to work on them. Whatever comes through, we tell them. I've seen the craziest of shit from doing literally an exorcism. I know Jack was there that night. I've talked about that in the past. Literally what we would term an exorcism we had to give to this one young girl who her mother brought. I watched one dude's jaw drop, and he sat in the middle and he had a problem with his dingling, couldn't get up. And right when he sat down, I knew what his problem was. And when you're in that setting, you ask, is it okay to talk about something personal? And you always get their permission first, because sometimes somebody will sit down in the middle and you see they're getting beat by their husband. You know what I mean? Which is kind of fucked up. But one thing I know that drives me into a fit of rage, I remember one time, because my particular Congo spirit doesn't like child abusers or child predators. And I remember we had one guy one night, he was doing that shit. And oh man, I can't even put into words the rage and the anger. But when somebody sits in what we call a hot seat in that type of work, we ask their permission. Is it okay to talk about something personal? And they'll say yes. They go, okay, sure, very personal. So, and I remember sitting there looking at my godmother. My godmother looked at me and she said, Michael, go ahead, say it. And I felt uncomfortable saying it because there was a lot of people there. I felt uncomfortable in the sense because I didn't want to embarrass dude, because I knew he didn't know what was coming. So, basically, she looked at me. She said, say it or I'll say it, because my godmother's crazy. Now, I'm going back a few years. So I say, yeah, you're struggling, brother, because, your stuff don't work. And he's looking at me. I was like, your shit doesn't, your soldier don't stand at attention. Dude, George just dropped. Like, he wanted to know how we knew that. Well, we said, this is why you came, right? Long story short, afterwards, I never forget this. And if Jack, you still here, you might remember when he came back. After the Misa was over, you know, he came into the back. My mother, my godmother, made this herbal concoction to get his soldier standing. She put together this whole concoction. Man, this dude came back 2 weeks later, fucking smile from ear to ear. He finally got him some pussy. And I remember when the drum started playing, he started dancing. He was one of the happiest motherfuckers I ever met because he wasn't able to do that, and it was years. You know what I'm saying? That's how powerful the spirit is, you know. And to me, we're always looking for these great, far-fetched, spooky ass shit. But sometimes it's like stuff like that in life, that little thing. Well, it's not. That's not a little thing, but it's those everyday human condition things that plague us that we struggle with. And this guy's life transformed because his shit's finally started working, and he was able to get his stuff going again, his mojo, and he felt like a man again. Turns out what we found out, though, in that work, and I remember this when we were working with him and my godmother, he had a female put some shit on him. Actually, it was his girlfriend, right when it started to happen, when he identified the time frame, and that was done to him. She had hired a voodoo priest. So because he broke up with her, she didn't want him using his stuff on anybody else. You get the point, without having to get into all the details. But the one thing that I still see today is watching that man dance. When he came back the second time, watching that man dance around with joy. And to me, that's magic. That's a beautiful thing to see the change, man. It's just to see. I'm talking about man was cheesing from ear to ear. And this is a grown man, this is an older man. This is a man in his early 50s, late 40s, early 50s. We're not talking about a young kid. We're talking about an older man, you know. But anyway, got me reminiscing. All right, what else we got? All right, so Tani says, I was speaking to an individual from Africa, and they said they guarantee that they say a person flying on a broom as a youth, and they saw much magic. Yeah, the shape shifted and taking flight, as mentioned, and we talked a little bit about that last week, not so much this week. I remember in 1992, St. Croix, United States Virgin Islands, there was an Obeah man that lived next door to my in-laws' house at the time. That's my oldest son's mother. This was 1992. I mentioned this last week. He lived right next door. I saw it for myself. I first heard, and again, I was a little skeptical, and I'm going back to 1992. So this is a while ago. Watch that man. That man shape-shift into a bat. He shape-shift into, what do they call them, husky dogs or them wolf-looking dogs. As bizarre as it might seem. And he was a well-known Obeah man. Not like he hit it. And I actually talked to him a few times, shook his hand. I mean, I don't think he had any malicious intent. I mean, I was only there for 6 months. I lived there in 92 just for 6 months for some stuff that was going on. And I know, all I can tell you is this, that man was definitely tapped into something. I don't fucking never disrespect the power of this. I don't ever downplay it. I couldn't even really care if anybody thinks this is bullshit. You might change your mind if you see certain things. Believe me, this is not bullshit. This path here and paths similar, I got the ultimate respect for it. And I got the ultimate respect for it because what I've seen and what I've experienced. So I'm not telling anybody to accept that. You should only base that acceptance on your personal experiences. But I would tell you this, just because you haven't experienced, I wouldn't just toss it aside as being bullshit. It's just maybe you just haven't got there yet. That's all. But this shit is real. And by your statement there, Tanisha, I'm sure that person you talked to from Africa probably saw some shit we never seen. All right. Good point. When we're talking about setting up the altar for Papa Bones, yes. And that's the yellow, red, black, and white are colors of the medicine wheel. And that's an important aspect to understand. Remember, colors also carry certain vibrations, right? Candle magic, when you're working candle magic, and if you understand that whole process of why certain colors are used for certain type of work, because of the vibration that they give off. A great book I always suggest people to read, which I think is one of the best books on candle magic, is Charmaine Day's Magic Candle. There's others. But the way she breaks down the colors in there is very simple, and it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, that's a good point with the colors. All right. Oh, the book, Tanisha, I put up again. I'm not going to even try to pronounce this guy's last name. I am talking to him right now to set a date to have him come on the show. He's from Trinidad. That's the name of the book. If you can see it, I ain't gonna, because I can't. I'm gonna butcher his name. It's called Obeah, a sorceress ossuary. Ossuray. What? You see, that's called Obeah. You see the bottom title, and that's the author's name. I ain't even gonna try to butcher that shit. It's Nicholas de Matos Frisvold, if I'm saying his name right. I don't want to butcher the man's name. And he is an initiate of Obeah. He was initiated by a high priest in Trinidad. And you'll find Obeah, the three most popular places: Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, Antigua. Again, my first encounter with it was in the early 90s in Brooklyn, New York. I knew by way of people I went to school with and friends in the neighborhood. And actually in Queens too. I'm not just going to say it wasn't just Brooklyn. I'm also going to say Springfield Gardens, which is area where I grew up, which is close to Jamaica, Queens, which somebody might know as Jamaica. Farmers in 167th. There was an Obeah man that had a herb or a root store right there on Farmers. They sold teas, herbs, standard shit, but he was a root man. We knew him as an Obeah root man. And a lot of them, as I said before, where I grew up in New York, a lot of them were Shango Baptiste. They were known as Shango Baptiste, or Shango Baptist, as somebody will say, which is really the same as Haitians hiding behind Catholicism, but they practice voodoo, or Cubans hiding behind Catholicism, but they really practice Santeria. That influence will always be there because of the connection with, during them times of slavery, they synchronized or hid their work behind the disguise of Catholic icons. Now we had this discussion last week with Bokor Rodney Coleman. I wanted to get his thoughts on it. We're not in those times of slavery now. How do you feel about the use of that still being used? He brought up a good point, and I learned this similar fashion last year, and I mentioned it. I never really worked with any of that until the last 6-7 months. I never incorporated any type of Catholic iconery in any of the work I did. But I got a really hard core lesson from Papa Legba that I couldn't ignore. But Bokor Rodney Coleman said something that was powerful. Sometimes the spirit, because of the bloodline via, would rather work through that aspect because it brings better results, and it chooses to commune better through that aspect. I find that to be true based on experience. Again, don't accept that. I say that to say I used to be judgmental of it. I never understood it. I wasn't in agreement with it because I felt we're not in slave times no more, so why are we still using that? But I realized that imagery has been so strong through many different generations. And I know the child of Antioch, the one that I think I showed, let me, just so you guys can see this. Hold on. Let me show you, just so you can get this was passed in it dawned on me, and I'm gonna explain, but I've showed it once before, but for those that may not have seen it, let me just quickly, because the visual obviously makes it a lot easier to understand. And this is the first time I probably ever even fucked with it. And those that know me know. And this was something I started in fall of last year, right? This is one of my Boudon altars, right? Papa Legba and some of the Boudon spirits, right? And I want you to see image. You see Ozili Dantor, right? You see the scars. And this was something that was communicated clear to me through work to set up. And I never fucked with any of this stuff, right? And I'm just so you have an understanding. But you see there's an incorporation of the skulls and some other shit. But anyway, and let me explain. But this, again, once you see that image, you probably have seen that image. Now you see, if you look closely, you see the red and black, you see the red and black beads. All right, and I'll explain. And I'll explain why you have Orzili Dantor next to it. All right. This was brought up last week when we had asked, or I had to get the Bocor's out, feelings on it, what he thought about it, right? And that statue that you see, first it started last July when my best friend passed away. All right, and again, not to get personal, I'm not asking anybody to accept my personal visions. I went in the church where they had the funeral. It was a Catholic church. And as I was sitting there and got lost in the whole thing of the ceremonies, as I was reflecting on my friend, I looked down and I look up and I saw, and what I saw in my mind's eye was an image of Papa Legba walking across the altar. I saw him with the straw hat on, the red and the black. And in the church, I saw that image of Child of Antioch. And I had that statue for years, and I'm going to explain. So I said, damn, they synchronized that in Catholicism with Papa Legba in Voodoo. So I said, shit. And then I reflected. My mother had that statue in her room for years growing up as a kid. It was given to her by her mother. My mother passed away. My godmother now, which is a crazy story without getting into, when my mother passed away in 1996, years later, who lives right here a few blocks from me, my father ran into her best friend, who is my godmother. My mother made her my godmother. And then after, my father wound up marrying her because originally they first started dating before he met my mother. It's a crazy fucking story. And guess what she gave me the first time when we reconnected, because she was my godmother, through birth, how they give you a godparent when you're born, not through EIF or anything like that. I hadn't seen her since I was a little kid. We had lost contact with her for over 20 years. And that's the first statue that she gave me. That was my mother's statue. So it came back. It came back to me, and then it was all clear. And then when I saw what took place at the funeral, that's when Papa Legba was trying to say, look, in order for me to connect, I've always been there in the genealogy connecting with you via that, but you abandoned it. So again, I can only go on my personal experience. I'm not telling nobody to accept this. I want to make this clear. And he said, by shutting that down, you're disconnecting a certain part of your ancestral genealogy. So I went into meditation and saw clearly how he wanted the altar set up. Put him in the center. He wanted Orzili Dantor to the left, which I put Orzili Dantor to the left because that's a warrior, sexual energy. She's a goddess. She don't take no shit. She's protective of women. And the reason why he wanted her there is because I was raised by all women. I got 3 sisters and I have no brothers. So long story short, he showed me crystal clear and via, it's kind of fucked up how this obviously, and matter of fact, that was the time only I was in New York and saw you when I was there. I was at that time, it was in July. And actually going to be there, I'll probably be there before August, but I'll definitely come in August, but I know I might be there. Anyway, get into that another time. But the whole point is, I used to be against that. That's not something I used to use. But sometimes when the spirit is communicating, that's what Bokor said, like he's been in his family for years. He uses it, it works, he gets results. And that's how you should gauge what you should and should not do. That's the point I'm trying to get to. If you're getting results, fuck what anybody else thinks. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it. That's your opinion. You're entitled to it. But if somebody is utilizing a certain methodology or system and they're getting results, that's all that counts. Don't worry about if you don't like it or not. Just don't fuck with it then. That's all. But I got my Papa Legba wake-up call in July of last year. And he made it clear, look, you're fucking with it all the wrong way. This is not how I've connected in your family for years. And then I went and got the sigil. I consecrated the sigil. Sometimes you might see me in videos where it's the black one with the key. It's got the veve on it. I made it clear to get that. But I connected it to the 7 African powers. I went and got some alekes and did some work with that. I'm not gonna get into that. Presented somebody else at one of the rituals that I was told to give it to them, and I passed it on to them. When you tap into, and that's why I say you got to understand the difference between spirit and archetype. There's a difference. We're talking about spirits here. Don't confuse this with working with, or deities and other pantheons. It's a little bit different when you're dealing with voodoo, Obeah. Now, when you're working with more of the traditional aspect of it, like Ifa and Santeria, that would be more of the deity archetype aspect. But there's different paths to that too, which I'll get into. I'm not going to get into that now. But I'm more or less talking about voodoo. I'm talking about the Loa, the Gede, the spirits of the dead. And I love my friend for that. I mean, sad he passed away, my best friend I grew up with. But I looked at him as being, that was a message because of that. It gets me a little emotional talking about it. Because of that, because of his death, I also took that as a message from him, And I'm not just saying this, we all like to say people close to us are good people. But as I said, and I said it back then on the video, way back in July when he passed and I came back, that was truly one of the good dudes. That was the dude, he was old school. That was the dude. I mean, his wife, he married her right after senior year out of high school. That was a dude that had the family, the perfect family. The dude you see on the sitcoms, the Cosby type family. You understand what I'm saying? He was definitely one of the good dudes. So I look at that experience back in July, all connected with him. There's a message to him as if he, in his transitional state, he's seen, and I believe and it's just me, I believe he was part of that, that whole. But I just remember that point at the funeral, it's like I was the only one there. Everything else was blocked out. I went into this fucking, when you see, when they show, if somebody's on acid in a movie, they show how they just melt and fade out. That's everything just started to melt and fade out except for the altar. And the only thing I could see was the closed casket that my friend was in, and Papa Leg was just walking right across the altar in front of his coffin. And then all that shit just started to be communicated. And then it was clear from the rest of my stay there till getting back. As soon as I got back is when I set up that altar. And again, I don't really talk about a lot of personal experiences in videos because you got to be careful because I don't want people to spook it out. It's personal. I want to make that clear. I'm not asking anybody to believe everything that I'm telling them because you can't. It's a subjective personal experience. But I'm passing this on to show you that the shit is real. I don't care if I couldn't give a fuck if anybody else doesn't think it's real. I know the shit is real. You understand? And you should only accept it when you have your experience. And I'm sure there's many of you watching that have had plenty of experience and personal things similar to what I'm talking about. But in relation to the whole Catholic iconery, it does serve a purpose if you so choose. If you want to use it, use it. If you don't, you don't. And again, this is coming from a person, I never used it. And if you heard me in older videos in the past, I actually spoke out against it. But I'm also man enough to admit, hey, I was wrong. You understand? Or maybe at that time, I didn't have a clear understanding of it. And I'm not afraid to admit that. I'm a human being. I make mistakes, but that's how I felt at the time. So it's not contradictory. It's just I can't ignore when something like that happens. Okay. So it's personal. It's if you choose to utilize it or not, that's entirely up to you is my point. All right. I forgot where the fuck I was at. Okay, Sister Trina, I am still motivated and inspired by the drum and ritual. Yes, and what Sister Trina's speaking about, she came a few months back. I think it was September or October. We did a ritual for Papa Legba, and it incorporated some of the drums. I'm not going to tell you. In the private session afterwards, she explained her experience. I'll let her share that if she feels. But yes, and I seen the motivation, and there was some other things there. And I told her in private, a lot of stuff comes out, a lot of emotion, a lot of energy, and awareness is the key. when you're doing that work, you become aware of the things you did not know. So I do, and I know you will be back soon. We've talked about it. So, all right. Oni says, I was overcome by Yemaya once told a friend off who wasn't taking care of her health. She stopped speaking to me behind that. Oh, well, that's her loss. Shakakti, the maze runner, right in time. What? I don't know if you're talking about me. I'm a Gemini. If you were talking about my date of birth or if you were talking to somebody else in the room, I'm not sure. I'm June 10th, 1971, Gemini. All right. Oni says, I deal with Kalfu, who's extremely lethal. If you don't know how to deal with his energy, I meet him at the crossroads at 3 a.m. Yes. I mentioned before with Kalfu, and yes, if you got experience and you know what you're doing, it's a very powerful energy. But remember, it's looked at a couple different ways with Kalfu. He's considered the twin brother or the opposite of Papa Legba, the more aggressive, destructive side he summons for destructive work or destructive black magic. I've always just warned people, and I'm not saying you only, maybe somebody first starting out working with him. Some people have invoked his energy and have had a hard time getting it to back off or ease away. I would just make sure, and in order for you to actually cease for it to exist, some people will go to the cemetery or the crossroads at 3 a.m. and invoke it, but sometimes you have to go back there and make it clear and say you're done working with it. You don't want to, you're kind of asking him to go back to where he resides, which is really everywhere. But if you don't make that intent clear, I found people in the past, and I'll use the term, get constantly harassed by Kalfu. So when you're working with certain spirits and energy, be knowledgeable. I've seen that come up a lot in this session, and I'm glad I'm here seeing that word. Do your research and be knowledgeable. Sometimes you open up those gates, but you got to know how to send them back through and close the gate and let the spirit know clearly you're done working with it for now. And there's ways of doing it. And Kalfu is one of those. I've seen people activate Kalfu for destructive black magic work and then don't know how to send it back. And then they cause disruption in their everyday lives, in their household, you got to make sure you send that shit back. Because if you do not send it back, hey, don't believe me. You can experience it for yourself, but that's one of them things you want to avoid experiencing if you don't have to. But yes, the correct way to do it, 3 a.m., 3 is the number when you're dealing with any of the crossroad deities, Legba, Ishu, even Ilegwa and Ifa, Kalfu. It's always multiples of 3. Really, you can use what I like to do, because every morning I do something for power, my basic invocations. I'll shake the maraca in any multiples of 3. That's the number. There's numerology in this shit too, because numerology communicates a lot of message to the mind when you're doing this work. And anytime I'm working the maraca for Legba, it's always in multiples of 3. Sometimes my intuition says shake it 3 times. Say, I go Papa Legba, I go Papa Legba, I go Papa Legba. I go means open the gates. Sometimes I get he's like, shake that shit 9 times. You know what I mean? That's how Papa Legba is, but very spirit, easy to appease with basic stuff, water, black coffee, and tobacco, sweets. But you got to be careful. I found if you overdo it with the sweets, the spirit, just like any of us as human beings, we get gluttonous and we want more and more. You also got to be very knowledgeable when you're working with the spirit and feeding it. Some people overfeed it or give it too much shit, and then it becomes expecting of it. All right. Now, you'll find this similar in all these African spiritual systems, even in Obeah. You got to be careful. It's like a kid. What happens to a kid? Like, when a kid starts eating candy or sweets or fun things, the kid, they want more and more, and they only stop until you what? You make the command and say, that's it. I do that with my son all the time if we're eating pretzels. And he's not a big junk food eater. The wife don't let him eat a lot of that shit. But, even if it's potato chips or whatever, that's it. There's a limit. If you don't, you got to, I'm using that metaphor. That's the same way you got to work with the spirit. You got to make that command and intent clear. If not, that shit will run amok. I'm telling you. Shakati, the maze runner, no fear, not at all in or nothing. True indeed. Again, when we were talking about earlier, Fear can hold you back. It can stunt your growth, your results, your progress. And fear too, look at the other side. There's a good aspect of fear, right? Let me give you an example. In some of the rituals we do, there's that anxious fear. When I see people sitting in the chamber room or the ante room waiting for the rituals to start, that anxiousness or that, excitement for waiting to see what's going to happen next, that's a good fear, because that's a fear that keeps you sharp on your toes. It's not a fear that you're afraid of. It's not a fear that makes you scared. It's not a fear that makes you not, experience and experiment. It's that fear you're anxious. I love watching that type of fear in people when we're doing ritualistic work. They feel like what's getting ready to happen next. And they're not scared, but they're very anxious, an anxious type of fear. Like sometimes the weight, and that's part of ritualistic work because the patience is a key factor. Not everybody has it. You understand? And I don't sometimes. That's a part of myself I've had to work on for many years. I struggle with patience to this day. I have a terrible temper and I blow up over the simplest things. The complicated things don't bother me. But I sometimes feel like basic shit pisses me off. When people do stupid shit, I feel like they should know better. But sometimes I got to understand sometimes they don't. It's not that just it comes off as ridiculous, but like, I don't know, just dumb shit. Like I go off on my son sometimes. Like, let me give you an example, just so people understand. And this is part of doing work with yourself. I'll lay little tests sometimes. Like if you walk past the garbage, you see that shit is full, and you throw something in there, and you just keep going. Don't you know, motherfucker, take that shit out and change it. That's just common sense to me. But then I realized sometimes that's what you get I'm just using that. Just little things like that drive me crazy. And that's what I got to work on. I shouldn't let little shit like that bother me. But yet if the ceiling caved in and fell to the floor, that probably wouldn't frustrate me as much. But if you walk past the garbage in the kitchen full, that bothers me. Go figure it out. Like that's understanding yourself. You understand? And sometimes we're looking for some deep shit to work on. And it could be something like that kind of blocks you. So I'm just giving you an example. But yeah. Okay, I think I threw the book and the author up there. I think you guys all got that. I know this probably came up again. This was earlier, but again. All right. If nobody got it, you could always email me. All right, Oni, I work with Rosili Dantor on Tuesdays. I gave a Florida word and a cane notation protects single moms and their children. She's no joke. Yeah, I like to use for the voodoo spirits, Pompeii or Pompeii lotion, and the Rada spirits like that, the cooler spirits. Florida water, personally, you should use with the more fiery spirits. That's just my opinion. It's not mandatory. But like I like to give Papa Legba and any of those Rada spirits, they like the Pompeii. And the Pompeii is a good spiritual oil / if you want to call it a cologne. And I remember at the Papa Legba ritual we did, and some of you in here might remember this. I don't know if Raven Heck is still here or Brother Jack. I had got a bottle of the Pompeii for Papa Legba, and we had it on the altar when we get ready to start the ritual. And I had just put a little out, and I kept hearing the spirits like Papa Legba wanted more, and I was getting around to doing it. That whole bottle just smashed. The whole bottle just smashed right on top of the altar, and that was the answer. And I remember the whole area was just emitting Pompeii lotion. Because what I like to do in some of the rituals, I take the Florida water, because the Florida water has igniting principles in it. I'll draw the sigils on the floor with the Florida water. You can light it, and now you have the sigil on the flame, and then I like to take it in my hands. But yeah, you can do wonders with that stuff. But I like to use the Florida water in those type of rituals with the fiery spirits, the petro, as they say. Now they're all really the same. As I mentioned before in the past, petro. They're saying, "Oh, don't work with those." Nah, that's all bullshit. That's where the real deal is. I don't give a fuck what anybody say. All right, what else we got? All right, bear with me. He did the little jumpity jump. All right. else we got? Okay, here we go. Woke Media, powerful presentation. Thanks. No, we appreciate it. Thank you. Again, thank all of you guys for coming. That's what makes you want to do it. Okay, only good. You got both flyers. Cool. You need to get your ass down here one day. All right. Okay, I think Raven Hecker was talking about a month ago when we did that ritual I was talking about earlier. Yeah, only you need to get your ass down here. Yeah, let me real quick, and I'm glad I see Raven Hecker mention that to my event. We did, but yeah, let me talk. I'm glad you bring that up. Totally forgot about that. So I'll share with you what I can. I'm not going to get personal what everybody went through. So the ritual we did this past Friday, a PEP as the chaos, the adversary of chaos and darkness. All right, let me just give you the gist. Just so people understand what we do here. It's not ceremonial magic. It has nothing to do with that. Some people might think that, but they're completely wrong. We like to call it a working because it's not really a ritual. It's a ritual because that's a word people can connect with. A working is a term used in the occult left-hand path to describe you're working on a specific thing to accomplish something. So the reason why you guys didn't see any clips, I usually post clips of the altar. This ritual was too personal, and what everybody experienced in it, it was clear not to shoot any images of it. That's why you didn't see any images. If anybody was wondering, I know somebody asked. That's why I didn't shoot any. And I remember saying to Raven Hecker right when it's over, something's telling me don't film, don't take any images of this. And she was like, yeah, don't do it. And I remember Sister Maya was there. I think we were all on agreement that just didn't feel appropriate to do it for those that were there. And it wasn't that many of us there. It was like 5 or 6 of us. I know my Sister Maya brought her son, and which was a good experience. But let me give you the gist of what we did. We went into the decompression chamber like we normally do. We decompressed for the ritual. We walked down the corridor, came into the temple. We cast the Hermetic circle. Brother Mike tolled the bell 9 times, did the invocation of casting the Hermetic circle. We went into our opening invocations. We went into a deep period of meditation. After the meditation, we did a mantra, which was that opened my ass up big time. And then we all formed a semicircle in front of the altar. I'm not going to tell you exactly in depth what we did. Everybody had to step forward, and I'm not going to tell you what we said, but everybody had to step forward one by one and admit about some fucked up things about themselves that they needed to work on. And that's when it got personal and kind of emotional for some people, because sometimes hearing yourself say it is different than just saying it in your head or saying it in your mind. Because the power of the moment of hearing your own, you saying it. But long story short, I think everybody was very honest with themselves and I had a very aggressive spirit that night. And those that were there know. And I was like, look, I told people on the outside, nobody come up with no fluffy ass bullshit when we get to that part of the ritual. I want to be a good person. I want to be nice. That I was going to kick motherfuckers out of the temple. And those that know were there, I said that when we were on the outside. I said, look, if anybody says that shit, you're going to have to leave, because that's not being real with yourself. That's vague, just bullshit, personally, in my eyes. And I see sometimes at work like that, people are still masking and hiding something. But what we do in the chamber room is personal. It's like that saying, what stays in Vegas stays in Vegas. What we do in the ritual room stays in the ritual room. But if you're going to come up there and go, I want to be nicer and a better person, get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. But anyway, I'll leave it there. But it was intense, and I know I'm still working with it. And those that probably know me probably didn't expect me to say some of the things I said, but I'm human too. I got fucking issues and problems just like the rest of the world does. And that's the real deal. I never portray myself, regardless of how long I've been studying or what I know, it doesn't mean I don't deal with human shit just like everybody else does to a certain level. But I will never let the human shit control me. The beautiful thing is, I feel like I'm at the point I can identify it, squash it, and never let it control you. But long story short, it was a very personal type of working that we did. And that's why I didn't film anything. I think we needed to just leave that there. It was a little different energy. Good ritual. But to shift gears, this ritual coming up on the 22nd, I'm going to tell you this, people. I'm going to see who's dark side in this ritual. I'm going to see who wears punk panties, and I'm going to see who wears the big girl drawers. All right? Because I know we got a lot of people on this path. They're so dark, and they're so this, and they're so working with the dead, and they're so vampire gods and goddesses. And all right, cool. We're going to see. We're going to see how much you like the darkness on this ritual. We're going to see how in tune you are with your darkness. And I will leave this here with that work. This next working is very initiatic in nature. You're not being initiatic into any group order. You're being initiated into the higher mysteries of yourself. It's a trial, tribulation, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical type of ritual. And it's going to be good. It's going to be dealing with the ritual, the ritual of the Sith, of the Dark Lord's ritual. It's really fortifying your mental willpower. Let me put it that way. That's what it's based on. Really strengthening your willpower. And as the Creed Sith goes, passion is our power. We're gonna see how much passion you really got. It's gonna be it'll be good. Trust me. I'll leave it there. Let it be good. And that'll be at the end of the month. Now, the next couple of videos I'm gonna start doing, leading up to it, I'm gonna be squeezing some videos in about the different aspects of Sith sorcery, Sith philosophy, and the path. For everybody that watches the channel, but also for those that are coming to the ritual, it'll also at the same time, I'll be killing two birds in one stone, putting some more information out there about it, but also preparing those leading up to the ritual. I like to do that because, you're not going to have any clue what to expect. You will never know till you get there, but at least your mind is in the right frame of thinking. At least you kind of are tapped into the energy and the frequency of that particular path and work. But you'll have no idea what's going to take place. And those that have participated, you know what I'm talking about. I'm looking forward to it. We haven't done one of these probably since this type of work since probably last January, put it that way. And I feel like it's time for that. So we'll see what happens. All right. So listen to Maya confirm. At Raven, I felt everything you said. All I could do is, cry. And they're talking about their experience from the ritual. It was good though. I'm just reflecting back. Like I say, everybody. It affects everybody differently. But remember, I always say this: in your moments of, if you want to call it personal pain, being emotionally, physically, whatever, there's tremendous growth. Never forget that. That's your most tremendous periods of growth through the obstacles and the challenges. Never look at that. If you embrace it, as opposed to looking at it as your downfall, takes on a different approach. All right, let me see if I get through the rest of this, man. Oshun is really masculine. Oh, yeah, on the Aoife theological scale, but they never mention that. Yeah, because everything with Oshun is always, she's a sex goddess. All right, what else we got? Okay, Nikki said later from her. Oh, you're new to the channel. Well, cool. Well, welcome. If you're still here, welcome to the channel. And as I was telling you earlier, yes, go through the archives. You will see videos on what you asked about earlier. They'll have titles of ancestor in it, like I said earlier. You'll find it. What else we got? Raven, heck, you had to check a dude today. Okay. You bitch slapped him, you back of the hand, you slapped him in the next week, like I told you. No, stop. All right. If I'm saying the name right, Exta. I don't know if I butchered it. That's good to hear. Formulating your own ritual to bring it. That's beautiful. And when you do it, what you could share, it'd be nice. If you can share aspects of it, when you're done, if you could share some of your experience, would be great. I would be interested in hearing. You don't got to get into everything in depth because some of it's going to be personal, obviously. But if you can share some of the aspects and your results, and that would be a beautiful thing for everybody to hear. So I'm glad to hear that. All right, what else we got? Nikki Bay, to work with Cali, do you have to go to Papa Legba first? Absolutely not. It's a different pantheon. It's a different system. Because Cali is a road opener in itself, kind of like Papa Legba. It's a path clearing energy. It's a gatekeeper energy. It bridges, quote unquote, the realm of the living and the dead. Cali's very similar in nature. No. The only thing I would tell you when you're approaching or working with Cali, very important, that you understand the power of Cali. What do I mean by that? I've done videos on Cali, go back and look at some of that work and some of them videos. The best way I can describe it with Cali, be careful what you ask for. It's the best thing that comes to mind right off the gate. I've noticed in my own personal experience, and when I've had serious obstacles in my life, Cali will come through ripping like a wild fucking tornado is the best way I can describe it, and turn everything upside down. That's sometimes the change that she brings. And you can sometimes confuse that for being something bad, like what the fuck just happened? But you may not have realized you needed that whole shit to be just turned upside down and completely destroyed. What do I mean by that? I've seen people fuck with Cali and come to the realization they could be with a mate or a partner for 5 years and then just realize at that moment, Cali's trying to let you know your problem, you've been sleeping next to your problem for the last 5 years and you just didn't realize it, if you get my drift, okay? So I would say be careful what you ask for with Cali. Just like anything else, be clear on your intent. That applies to everything. And no, it's no fucking joke. I find mantra magic with her is very effective. I would refer you to Bal Cadman's Mantra Magic book and get some ideas out of that. I mean, there's many books on Cali. There's a lot of stuff out there. And it should give you ideas to create your own work. And that's kind of what I did. I like to basically just take an image of Cali. I'll use candles color-wise that are associated with particular work. I like to use gold and black for finances, works very effective. And I'll do mantras that are affiliated with finances if it's financial work. If I'm trying to get something out of my circle, be it a person, place, or a thing, I like to use destructive road clearing mantras and solid black candles. And I like to use Indian or Hindu incense. Nagjampa is good, or a good quality Indian resin, because she does like the way that stuff smells. When I say she, I'm really talking about the she, whether you male or female that resides within you, but that's a whole nother story another time. But yeah, very effective work with Cali, but be prepared. And one thing, if you're looking for quick, and I mean literally quick, it's quick. But be prepared for change. This is a vampire. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, with stone of this. I'm not even going to lie to you. I don't even know if it's, I got to look it up. I do have the sheet that I bought it, but right now my mind is drawing a blank. I will look it up, but I don't want to give you any false information. Not sure offhand. Nurse Coco, back. I remember you from a couple weeks back. Welcome back. Oh, good. I'm glad Trina was talking about the last online class. The class was off the chain, the chanting, the actual work we did, and it was still amazing. Well, I appreciate that. And again, that's the difference of what we do here and in the class. And those that take the class, and I'm not just saying it to plug the class, but of course I got to plug it in. It's what I do. since Trina mentioned it, I did, again, if you didn't get the information for the upcoming spring session, it's going to start March 23rd. The whole curriculum is done. It's going to run through April 27th, and we do them on Saturday afternoons, 3 Eastern time, and it runs 4 to 5 hours a session. So we do a little break, a little 10, 15-minute break at the midway point. You use the bathroom, get your little snacky snacks, some water, whatever. But we do work. And this next session is going to have even more stuff. And the difference in those in the online class sessions, we're actually using techniques and methods. And that's the whole difference. Obviously, I'm not going to do that here in an open setting. But I learn from the classes, just interacting with you people. I get a lot out of it from your experiences. We're going to be doing some stuff on this one. And there's one, I'm not going to get that away. That's for those that signed up, but it's good. Like I say, I enjoy it myself too, because I learn from you guys, and in those group settings and interaction, I learn a lot from you guys. One thing we got to learn to do, this is a skill. Let me throw this out there. When you are talking and you are teaching, learn to listen to yourself talk and learn from what you're saying as you're talking. I'm going to leave that there. There's a method to that. When you start naturally doing that, you're tapped into something. You understand? But marinate on that. Yeah, Oni. Yes, my experience with Brother B was very real. I have deep respect for his knowledge. Yeah, I mentioned a few months back in July when I went to my friend's funeral, I had the chance to meet personally with Oni and do a little bit of work with her, and was able to see the stuff you hear her talking about Aoife, and I mentioned that before back then. It's all around her. It's all around her house. Trust me when I tell you. So when you hear her talking that stuff, it's like walking into a little Aoife shrine when you walk into her house. She's about not just Aoife, but she's about those paths. And I say that to say, because if you hear her talking about it a lot, she's not just talking about it because she's just talking about it. So, and actually it was good because she was not too far from where I was in New York, where she's at in Brooklyn. Where I'm at and where my family lives it's a train ride away. So, but yeah, it was nice to be able to link up. And like I say, we'll be coming back there. No, I'll be there for sure in August because I got to come up there for a function. But I'm looking to take a trip up there right after it gets warm, especially when baseball season kicks off. So I'm looking to get up there as soon as spring kicks off to catch a couple games and then come back in August. And I know Travis Sinclair, I know if you're not in here, I was trying to link up with you in the Bronx. That didn't work out. So, brother, I would try to definitely make an effort to try to link up with you, because that day you called me, I was way in Brooklyn and you were way uptown, and time wasn't, I'd had to get on a train. It took me about an hour to get over that way, because going from that part of Brooklyn to way uptown in the Bronx, that's a ride, brother. But I will try, definitely. If anybody in New York, I'll put it out there when I'm there. What I would like to do is we can meet somewhere, get some grub, and just build. You know what I mean? So if you're in New York, and when I'm put a date that I'll be up there, let me know. Maybe we could set a day where a group of us can meet that's convenient for us and just shoot the shit. Just kick it. Get some grub and chill. What else we got? Woke Media says Obeah is on and popping in Guyana. Yeah, Guyana. I forgot to mention Guyana. And actually in the book, he talks about that too. It is very heavily practiced in Guyana. Jersey Dread, those are the experiences I'm trying to see in the first hand. Well, you will. And remember, everybody's going to raise themselves up to the self-realization. Remember, that's the goal of the classes, the videos, the radio, is to you guys to use this information so you guys can raise yourself up and have your own personal experiences, and you will, and that's going to happen. All right, I'm going to skip some of the comments and just try to get to the questions for time's sake, because goddamn, it's over 3 hours already. So let me just get to any questions. So if I'm skipping some comments, I'm just going to bypass them for time because I don't think I'm going to get to them all tonight. All right, what have we got? All right, let's see. Divinely guided goddess. If we, as the I am and the final authority, though, then isn't it all we command is in no rules but that which we say? So you're always in control. That's why I was saying, even when you're in this path, when you're working with spirits, I use the example, you're always giving that firm command. And I'm speaking specifically, let's just say if we're talking about this path. But when you're dealing with any aspect or any path, remember this, nothing, you can only allow something to have control of you if you allow it. You understand? So yes, you are always in control. All thing, universe is mental, all is mental, mental is all, universe is mental. The first principle of Tahuti, that's key. And a magician understands that principle because everything has its point of origin in the mind. Even everything that appears to create the illusion that's external. And I say appear because it is, and it has its point of origin in the mind. Because remember, what you're seeing is just the polarity of the same thing. And what we're really working with is vibrational frequencies and energies when we're talking about all these things. That's what magic really deals with, understanding how to work with those vibrational frequencies and energy, knowing the who, when, where, and how, because they all serve a purpose. A black magician understands that there is no parameters. There is no good or bad, right or wrong. Those are just different levels of perception. And that's why I always refer people to really understand what we call Heka or Egyptian black magic, Egyptian Luciferianism, black magic, all of these spiritual sciences. I always tell people, master those 7 hermetic principles of Tahuti. Because the problem is, in a lot of these fluffy circles dealing with Kemetic studies, everybody's focused on Ma'at. Ma'at this, Ma'at that. And I told you, Black Adam, we don't ever look at balance is really stagnation. You should be focused on harmony. You can't understand Ma'at if you do not understand the 7 hermetic principles of Tahuti. One represents the subjective realm, the other is the objective. See, the problem is when everybody's focusing on Ma'at, what they're focusing on is things on the objective realm, tangible, physical. The 7 hermetic principles of Tahuti, which connects and correlates and goes even more deeper. And when you read in the Emerald Tablets of Tahuti, it even expounds further. The one thing, what is the one thing? It really explains the aspect of the quantum physics, or what we call all, or all in all. There's different metaphysical terms for it. It's just a way of saying all things are connected and all things reside within us. And that's even on this path when we talk about Obeah. We're not contacting anything external. It all resides within, which that's what gives you the power and the control and the command. You always have that. So we have to always look at it in that aspect for sure. I hope that's what you're referring to. I hope. And the only rules that there are the rules that you create. Right? You create your own rules. And that's why we call it the path of self-mastery. What does that mean? The key word in that is self. It's up to you as the individual to lay out a path that personally works for you. And in that process, I understand your path of personal self-mastery may not be the same as mine and vice versa. And that's okay. Because that path should be laid out, defined, and unique in the sense that it's structured for what I need or what that individual needs on their journey or path. But the thing is, we're all trying to get to that same goal, which is what? Self-mastery, or becoming that God / or goddess. So there's many dynamics to it, but yes, hopefully I'll see if you wrote anything further down. I hope that was the area you were coming from, if I understood your question right. If not, maybe I'll see something later down or address it another time. All right, Demetrius, peace. I see you left. We're going to be shortly. I'm almost at the bottom here. Woke meeting. Is it okay from your experience to not want to work on any aspect of being a better human beyond doing no harm? All right, let me make sure I understand this. Is it okay from your experience to not want to work on any aspect of being a better human beyond doing no harm? I'm not sure if I understand the question. You mean beyond doing harm to somebody? Beyond that, I mean, I'm not sure what you're referring to, woke media. There is a destructive part of this path. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes you gotta fuck somebody up. I'm gonna be honest with you. There is parts of this path where you might have to harm somebody if you're in danger. I'll leave that there. But maybe I'm not understanding the question. We should always be trying to be bettering ourselves on whatever level that is. Even includes perfecting the things we're even, always trying to add to and improve the things we're good at, not just working on the things, if maybe you're referring to things that are harmful for us or things that are holding us back, which is a strong part of the path, but you should also be sharpening your skills, like the old saying, sharpening your sword. So even the things that you are good at, you should always be trying to get better, even if you're really good at something. You should never settle. So I would apply that perfection or striving to be perfect for everything. And when I say everything, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, you should want to be successful financially. You should always be doing work in those areas. Physically, you should be trying to stay in the best shape you can, exercise and a decent diet. That should always be a goal. Mentally, you should always be getting your mind sharp by taking in information and knowledge that's always going to make you grow. And spiritually, via your ritualistic work. So I use that kind of as a blueprint. I'm always working on aspects to better myself spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and yes, financially. Not sure if that's the area, if you were speaking in that spectrum of things. I may not have understood your question, but I think that might have been what you're talking about. Albert Nance, intuitive intent is powerful. That's right. Always go with your intuition. We call that our inner voice, our inner being, right? We always were taught from a very young age, never go against that inner voice. We'll give you an example. How many of us were younger and we always knew there was this one place you shouldn't go and hang out? It could have been a neighborhood, a specific place, a hangout spot. You always knew shit went down. Your inner voice would tell you, don't go there, man. Shit pops off there all the time. But there's going to be some banging ass females there. So we let that cloud our judgment. But that inner voice said, don't fucking go. We go and some shit pops off and then we say, damn, I would have wished to listen to myself. So always listen to that intuitive intent. Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad. I figured I butchered your name. Albert Nance, it's all encoded within the subconscious. Know your magic. True indeed. Yeah, divinely guided goddess. Yes, you're right. Callie doesn't play. Yeah, and Ganesh or Ganesh. Yes. Yeah, be very cautious of that. Keisha Smith. I'm glad you had a similar experience with Callie in 2018. Yeah, no joke. Serious change. Damn, hold on. Cool. Okay, we're getting there, people. I'm determined to finish. We're almost there. I'm skipping some of the comments. No, Black Titan. If you're talking about the online classes, no. I think the platform I use can hold up to 50. So no, there is no limit. I don't usually have a problem with the limit. And again, if you don't have the information, I send you the information, and I let people can register and pay up until before the class starts. So I work with everybody. I'm very reasonable and fair. Just gotta be straight up with me. Don't I don't like dealing with bullshit. So I work with people. I understand. All situations. All right. Yeah, that's a good point with hip hop. Yeah, I think tapping into that Gnostic or not Gnostic part of himself, I think that has a lot to do with it, because I've always been a firm believer. If you go back to the beginning days of hip hop, when you go back to the early 70s, going into the 80s, and I'm going to say roughly, to me, where it really started going to shit was the early 2000s. I mean, the boom bap era, I kind of liked. that mid 1990s, going in the late 90s, early 2000s to me when it started going to shit, when all the sing-along, bubblegum, cornball rappers and shit came in. But I always believed back then that it was a gift from the gods to speed up our intellect. I believe, yes, I think these guys tap in to a certain divine energy, that such a creative energy, because, like, as you know, yesterday was the God Rakim's birthday, who's my favorite MC of all time. I mean, you look at him for an example. Yeah, and I'll big him up because he's my favorite MC of all time. I mean, just the shit. I mean, his flow, the shit he was saying shit back then that would still be high tech, in my opinion. Today, nobody's even is even the shit he was popping in '86. Nobody's even. There's artists out now that are garbage. And yeah, maybe I'm stuck in my generation. Call it what it is. I don't know. Yeah, I'm old school, but you know, I understand. You know, we were getting mocked when we were younger. We were told the shit we were listening to was crap, but this shit they're listening today is crap. This oopity doopity doop, bippity bippity bop, soupity doopity doo. How can you listen? That's not even rap or hip. Don't even call it. It's rap. It's crap is what I call it. It's not hip hop, because hip hop, you know, deals with real elements of the music. Again, I'm trying to be considerate of the younger generation. I'm not, look, yeah, I know you might say, shut up, old man. You're stuck in the 80s and the 90s. I am. I crave for lyrical skill, lyrical content, creativity. There's none of that in hip hop and rap no more. Everybody sounds the fucking same. Every beat is that trap beat with the same fucking sound. It sounds like one long ongoing mix that's never going to end. So I really can't get down with it because it's pure garbage and crap to me. Whereas back then, everybody had their own style. They were unique. Yeah, you know, party rappers, political rappers, you know, people telling you what's going on in the street, hardcore rappers, you know what I mean? Party rappers. I mean, everybody had their style. Now, all the videos, there's nothing. It's all the same shit. Everybody's same video, you know, come on. But I do think that's a good point. I do think they are, the way you describe it. Keyword self. That's correct. Raven Hecatown. Black Titan, good question. I use the Ouija board. I used it when I was a kid a lot, right? And I wasn't really on this path back then. I remember, you know what, you're gonna laugh, but I'm glad you bring this up. It's a good. One movie that used to scare the shit out of us when we were kids, me and my friends, and I'm going back when I was probably between the ages of 11, 12, 13, the movie The Exorcist is what motivated me to want to use the Ouija board. And I remember we bought the Ouija board. I remember we went down to Woolworth, right? We bought an Ouija board. I'll never forget it. And in the summertime, it was like a big thing. We would use it and have these little, you know, we'd be in somebody's basement and shit. So I did fuck with it back then as a kid. As far as now, recently on my path, you know, now that you bring it up, no, I might fuck with that and see. But no, I have not used it recently at all in any shape, form, or fashion. I've heard people incorporate it in their spiritual work. It can be used as a tool of demonization, as a medium tool. I remember back then fucking with it as a kid. We believed that we were experiencing something. But you know, back then we wanted to try that stuff because anything you told us not to do, we was going to do anyway. But I've never used it in the way you described for channeling, or I do or have heard of people that have. But no. Okay, Divine, we got it, guys. Glad to answer your question. Okay, cool. All right, I think we are at the end, people. All right. Yeah, Raven, yeah, your mom, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's one of those things that, like I said, that's what sparked me to use it as a kid. Because I remember as a kid, the first time I saw the original Exorcist with Linda Blair, it scared the fuck out of me as a kid. And I remember, it just goes to show you how we self-create fears. I remember, you remember the scene? Some of you might remember the scene when she was on the bed and fucking going up and down. Yeah, your mind, it shows you how you can convince. I remember after seeing that the first night, I swore my bed was moving up and down, and I spooked myself out. I scared the living. I scared myself. There was nothing there. I scared the shit out of myself. But I remember that was the movie that sparked me to fuck with it. And so I dabbled with it as a kid. I have not used it as an adult in any shape, form, or fashion in any spiritual work. But as I said, I do know or have heard of people who have. And like I say, my motto is, hey, if you get results and it works, go for it. I don't judge anybody for anything. Even though you see, we got to get out of this. We got to get out of this mentality. Even though we may not like something, that's personal. Even though we may not really feel a vibe with something, that's personal too. Don't let that cloud your judgment, because as I said earlier a while back, and I'm going to leave everybody with this. As I said earlier a while back, if you're getting results from something, don't worry about what anybody thinks. Don't worry about what it appears to others. You cannot be concerned on this path about what somebody else thinks about you, because that's going to hold you down in itself. That's another blockage that you're creating. I don't worry about what people think, because I say this because I don't expect everything that I teach here in the channel for everybody to agree with. That would be humanly impossible, because then that would show you're not an individual thinker. I do understand and know a lot of people can resonate with a lot that I'm saying, but there's no way you're going to, I can't sit here. I'd be a fool to think that somebody listening agrees with every single thing I say. And I'm not mad if you don't. It shows me you are your own thinker. You shouldn't have to agree with everything I say. You could connect with it, but what I look for the things in people that I can connect with. Like if somebody does a practice that I may not feel a vibe with, I'm not going to worry about spend my energy bashing it and disagreeing with. What can I get out of that I can connect with on some level in what I do? That's it. And if you approach your work like that, you avoid the bullshit. So I've learned that. And once you start approaching your work like that, it eliminates a lot of the bullshit. All right. Okay. Yeah, that invocation, if you're talking about the proper bones invocation, I feel like somebody's squeezing my head. I mean, literally like squeezing it. All right. I'm going to leave it there, people. Again, real quick, before everybody departs. If you didn't get any of the flyers, they're posted in the community section. If you go to the YouTube page right here, just a reminder, all the announcements that I talk about are in the community section of the YouTube page. The flyers are posted there for the rituals on the 22nd, the drumming on the 23rd. That's posted. If you need it, I can email it to you. The online classes, which I haven't put that in the community section. They just reminded me. I have mailed out all the information to those that requested it, to my knowledge, on my list, and some people have contacted me individually. You should have received it. If I did not send that to you, or I missed you by chance, just send me an email and I'll get that out to you. The classes will start March 23rd. They run to April 27th. I'm trying to do 3 to 4 sessions a year. I take a couple months break in between, especially for the people that took it, because it's a lot of shit to absorb. You're talking about 6 to 7 weeks of 4 or 5 hour sessions. So I like to take a break, let that marinate for a couple months before we do the next one, because we're just bombing you. And then it gives you time to apply some of the work before we get to the next session. So that'll be starting on March 23rd. And if you need spiritual consultations or readings, you can email me, all at the same address, description box. What's the last question, Raven? And then we'll wrap it up. But yeah, for consultations or spiritual readings, all same email you see in the description box of all the videos. All right. I don't know if you heard me. Did you hear me? You said there was one last question. You still there? I don't see the question. Okay, hold on. Let's see. I guess you're not. Let's see if you'll pick up. Okay. Disregard. That's me calling. I thought you left. All right, I'm hanging up. What's the last question? Go ahead. I was just calling. If you saw your phone ring, that was me. I thought maybe you walked away or something. All right, should I play the Alex Trebek music? 11 p.m. One last question. Yes, 11 p.m. We're going to get this to today, or what? Should I play the Jeopardy music? One last question. Yes, 11 p.m. I'm still waiting for your question, Ray. Hold on. I think we gotta disconnect. Hold on. All right, that's me calling again. Is it what the one there, the servitors? This one here? Which one? Is that the one that you're talking about? The one that just popped up, Holistically Me? Oh, okay, I see it. I didn't. All right, my bad. I probably skipped it. Okay, I'll make that the last one. All right, cool. All right. All right, my bad. That might have been when I was scrolling down, the thing jumped skip. So I apologize for that. Holistically Me. This will be the last question. Again, she was just reminding me when I was scrolling down and missed it. That's why I got her moderating, because I can't catch everything sometimes. Yeah, I don't know what time you came in. I did talk a little bit about that earlier. Creating servitors can be a very good thing, but let me also add this. Servitors are great for when you're trying to create them to accomplish specific things, and I've worked with it on that. Can be used. Well, it can be used in a controlling aspect. It can be used for sexual energy. It can be used for finances. It can be used to do bidding. But you got to be careful how you cultivate them, because they can be consuming. You can create them so powerful where they can be an obstruction. So my experience, I like to work with servitors doing demonic integration work, or even in vampire magic or vampire type of work. They can become a very powerful tool to get results. It's always a good thing, and I was mentioning it earlier. Those are probably some of the most powerful things you work with are the self-created. But my experience working with them are on those levels. I've created them for all the aforementioned methods that I just described, but I've learned to be careful how you cultivate them. I've also, from other people's experience and talking with other people and from elders, but we'll want to be careful when you do that, because you can create them so powerful they can run amok. Just like anything else, educate yourself. So hopefully, to give you a quick answer, I know we're kind of running short on time. But yes, it is definitely a good part of this path to work with. You could even use it, an aspect of servitors I'll also use is an Eastern mysticism, like commanding the jinn. I'll use it for some jinn work. You can actually command the jinn from that aspect of serving certain purpose or needs. So there's different methods of doing it too. Most people are just familiar with that common methodology, but you can use it in a variety of ways. But I've learned, just educate yourself to the power of it, just like anything else. But maybe that's something we can elaborate on. I did actually know what there's a video creating servitors. I did a video on it, so it's exclusively on that about maybe 2 months ago. I think it's called Creating Servitors via Vampire Magic. You'll see it. It's in the title of the video, and the whole video is focused on that. So I would refer you, Holistically Me. Look for that video in the archives. And again, it was about 2 months ago. You'll see it. It's in the title, Creating Servitors. But anyway, all right, people. I appreciate it. Good class. I'm looking forward to seeing some of you guys at the end of the month. Looking forward to seeing some of you guys in March. Don't forget, Thursday night, Father Sebastian live on Primordial Chaos. We're going to be talking about his book, Vampire Magic. I want to see you guys call in and live and speak with him and ask your questions. We'll have him here for a few hours, and he's willing to come back a couple of times. I've talked with him. So let's get this thing, going, and let's take advantage of the opportunities when we have it. All right. So we'll talk, people. Peace. Remember, Sith video is coming up next to prepare for the ritual at the end of the month. Peace.